Ariel Johnson had always been a little different. Most kids her age liked to talk about the latest TikTok trends or argue over which superhero was the best. But Ariel? She liked to talk about the stars. It wasn't something she could help, not really. Ever since she was little, her mother had shared her fascination with the night sky. Tamara Johnson, Ariel's mom, had a way of looking at the world that made everything seem connected. When Ariel was 6, they used to spend hours lying on the grass together, looking up at the stars. Her mom would point out constellations, teaching Ariel the names of planets, moons, and galaxies. "There's magic in the stars, baby," her mom would say, tapping Ariel's chest gently. "Everything is written up there, and one day, you'll see it too." But now, it was just Ariel. Her mother was gone. Gone too soon. The memory of that warm summer evening, when her mom's soft voice had filled the air, was the last piece of comfort Ariel had left. And every night since, Ariel looked up, searching for something. A sign. A connection. She didn't always know what she was looking for, but she felt it in her bones. The stars weren't just a pretty display, they were a guide. But here, in the halls of Oakwood Middle School, nobody cared about the stars. Ariel slouched in her seat in homeroom, trying to blend into the background, as usual. She was used to being the quiet one, the girl who never quite fit in. The whispers from her classmates always found their way to her ears, and she had learned to ignore them. But today, the whispers were louder than ever. She could feel the eyes on her as Mr. Green, the substitute teacher for the day, began to roll call. "Let's see. Aiden. Ariel Johnson." Ariel nodded, avoiding eye contact. As Mr. Green continued calling names, she felt the weight of the room pressing down on her, the air thick with judgment. She tried to ignore it, but there was one thing that always brought attention to her in this class: her love for astrology. It wasn't just some passing phase for Ariel. Astrology was her language, her way of making sense of a world that often seemed chaotic. And yet, every time she mentioned it, people looked at her like she had lost her mind. It didn't matter that she could accurately predict a classmate's mood based on their zodiac sign or that her sketches of star maps were more detailed than anything they could find in textbooks. It didn't matter that she had a gift, a connection with something greater than herself. They just didn't get it. Ariel's thoughts were interrupted when Devon, a classmate she didn't really know but who always seemed to be around, stood up from his desk. He was laughing, holding up his science project, an overly complicated volcano model that looked like it might collapse any second. "Watch this," he said, grinning. "It's Mercury in retrograde, and I'm pretty sure this thing is going to explode just like it's supposed to." Ariel's stomach clenched. She wasn't sure what it was about the mention of Mercury in retrograde, but something inside her always reacted when people used the term carelessly. They didn't understand it. They didn't know the power behind those words. She stood up from her desk. "Actually, Mercury in retrograde isn't a joke, you know," she said quietly, but loud enough for the class to hear. A few kids turned to look, and she saw Madison, the most popular girl in school, roll her eyes. "Oh my God, not you too, Ariel," Madison said, sneering. "Can you stop with the whole astrology is everything thing? You sound like such a freak." Devon chuckled, but Ariel could see the uncertainty in his eyes. He wasn't the type to bully, but he wasn't going to defend her either. No one ever did. The room erupted in laughter, and Ariel felt the familiar sting in her chest. Her hands began to tremble, but she forced herself to stay still, refusing to show weakness. She sat back down, staring at her notebook, doing her best to block out the noise. She could still hear them, though, the voices whispering in the background, making fun of her. Ariel the astrology girl. Does she seriously think the stars control everything? Maybe she should join the astronomy club, where she belongs. Ariel clenched her fists. She hated how they talked about her. But what hurt more was how she felt invisible. They didn't see what she saw. They didn't understand that the stars weren't just twinkling lights in the sky. They were a map that could tell her things no one else could. They were a part of her, and if they couldn't see that, she didn't know how to explain it to them. Her mom had always said she'd grow up to be someone who would change the world. But what if the world didn't want to be changed? What if she was just a kid with a strange obsession and nothing else to offer? The bell rang, signaling the start of the next period. Ariel packed up her things slowly, unwilling to leave yet. She needed a moment to breathe, to let the whispers fade away. She grabbed her notebook and walked out of the classroom, heading to the hallway where the students shuffled from one class to another. It was in this moment, in the quiet of the hallway, that something strange happened. Ariel felt a sudden chill, like a breeze brushing across the back of her neck. She looked up, surprised to see the window at the end of the hall cracked open. The sky was clear, the sun shining brightly, but there was something about the air that felt different, charged, almost. For a split second, Ariel thought she saw a flash of light in the distance, a flicker of something moving across the sky. Her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just the weather. It was the stars. She didn't know how she knew it, but she could feel it in her bones. Something was about to change. Something bigger than she could understand. Her grandmother always told her, "The stars are never wrong, Ariel. Trust them." And Ariel did. She always had. That evening, after school, Ariel sat in her room, looking out the window at the clear night sky. The stars were more alive tonight. They sparkled brightly, like they were beckoning her to come closer. She set her notebook aside and reached for her telescope. She had always loved the feeling of looking through the lens, seeing the universe stretch out before her like an endless sea of possibilities. But tonight, something felt different. She felt like she was on the edge of discovering something new, something that might change everything. She adjusted the telescope and began to trace the stars, her fingers gliding over the paper as she began to sketch. Her drawing wasn't just a map of the stars. It was a pattern that felt like a secret, something only she could see. It was the way the stars aligned, the way they moved, the way they connected. Ariel didn't know what it meant, but she felt it deep inside. This was important. "Mom," she whispered into the night, her breath barely a whisper against the cool air. "I hope you're seeing this. I hope you know that I'm still trying." She closed her eyes, and for a moment, she felt the stars watching over her, guiding her, telling her that she wasn't alone. Maybe, just maybe, the stars were about to reveal something to her that no one else could understand. And with that thought, Ariel finished her drawing. She didn't know it yet, but that simple act, drawing the stars, trusting her instincts, was the first step towards something much bigger than she could have ever imagined. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Ariel had always known that the world around her wasn't the same as the one she saw through the lens of her telescope. But that didn't stop her from trying to bridge the gap. Every night, she'd sit by the window in her room, sketching the constellations, whispering to the stars. Each one held a secret, a promise of something she couldn't yet understand. But as much as the stars spoke to her, she couldn't shake the feeling that something in her life needed to change. The weight of her mother's death hung around her like an invisible cloud. It had been 6 years, but the grief still felt fresh, like a wound that refused to heal. Her mom had been everything to her, her guide, her anchor in a world that didn't always make sense. Now, Ariel had to navigate it all alone, with only the stars to comfort her. Her grandmother, a quiet woman with sharp eyes and an old soul, had been the one to raise her. She was the only one who understood Ariel's love for the stars, the only one who never questioned her belief in the cosmos. But even Grandma couldn't fill the void left by her mom. And sometimes, when Ariel looked at her, she felt a pang of guilt, as if she were somehow abandoning her grandmother by holding on to the past so tightly. The morning after her awkward encounter in class, Ariel woke up to a quiet house. Her grandmother had already gone to work at the small bakery down the street, leaving Ariel alone to think. The silence in the house was suffocating, as it often was on mornings like this. It felt like no one else existed outside of her little world of star charts and old memories. She shuffled into the kitchen, making herself a cup of tea. As the hot water poured into the mug, she noticed the stack of bills on the counter. It was a constant reminder that life wasn't always as easy as it seemed in her drawings. Money was tight. Grandma worked hard, but the bakery didn't bring in enough to cover all the bills, and Ariel knew it. She wasn't blind to the struggles that her grandmother faced. But her grandmother never complained. She just kept working, kept doing what she could to keep them afloat. Ariel sat down at the table, sipping her tea as she stared out the window. The sun was shining brightly, but it felt too bright. It felt like the world was trying to tell her something, and she couldn't figure out what. She didn't belong in this world of normal people. She wasn't like the other kids at school. They had their cliques, their interests, their friends. Ariel had only the stars. The school day passed in a blur. Every class felt like an endless loop of faces, whispers, and distant stares. Ariel couldn't shake the feeling that she was invisible, that she didn't matter to anyone. She didn't fit in, not with the popular kids, not with the jocks, not even with the quiet ones who sat at the back of the class. During lunch, she sat alone at her usual spot by the library doors, picking at her sandwich while watching the other kids gather in groups. The chatter and laughter echoed in her ears, but she couldn't bring herself to join in. It wasn't that she didn't want to be a part of it, it was that she felt like a stranger in her own life. "Hey, space girl." Ariel looked up to see Devin, the boy who'd made the Mercury in retrograde joke earlier that morning, standing in front of her. He had a grin on his face, but it wasn't mocking this time. He looked more curious than anything. Hey," Ariel said, her voice quiet. She felt a mix of surprise and discomfort. No one ever approached her like this, especially not after the way they'd laughed at her yesterday. Devin sat down across from her, still smiling. "So, I've been thinking about what you said. About the stars and Mercury. I know it sounds dumb, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting." Ariel blinked, unsure of how to respond. Was he making fun of her again? She glanced around the lunchroom, making sure no one was listening in. "I mean, I don't really get it," he continued, picking at the corner of his tray, "but there's this whole thing with astrology that people talk about, and it's kind of like, some people swear by it. You know." Ariel couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips. Maybe Devin wasn't as bad as she thought. He was trying to understand. He wasn't laughing at her, he was curious. "Yeah," Ariel said slowly, looking down at her sandwich. It's more than just a hobby for me. I don't know, it's like a language, I guess. The stars have always felt like home to me. They remind me of my mom." Devin's expression softened. "I'm sorry about your mom. I didn't know." Ariel nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "It's okay. It's been a while, but sometimes I still talk to her, you know. Like when I look up at the stars, it's like she's still up there." Devin didn't say anything for a long moment. He just nodded, chewing his food thoughtfully. Then, after a pause, he looked up at her. "You know, my grandma used to talk about the stars too. Not like you do, but she used to say that everything in life was connected. That the stars, the moon, even the sun. They were all part of the same story. She believed it. Like, everything in the universe had a purpose." Ariel blinked, surprised. "Really?" "Yeah," Devin said, smiling a little. She always talked about it when things were tough. Like, when something bad happened, she'd say it was just part of the bigger picture. A lesson or something. Ariel looked at him, intrigued. "That's kind of like what my mom used to say." The bell rang then, signaling the end of lunch. Devon stood up, pushing his tray toward the trash. "Well, I don't know if I believe in the stars the way you do, Ariel," he said, "but maybe you've got something there. Maybe the universe is trying to tell us something." Ariel didn't know what to say. She wasn't used to having conversations like this, especially not with someone who had made fun of her in the past. But for the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Not completely understood, but seen. That night, as she sat at her desk, Ariel pulled out her sketchpad again. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but she knew that something was about to change. The stars had always guided her, but now, with Devon's words echoing in her mind, it felt like the universe was about to reveal something new, something important. She took her pencil and began to sketch, her hand moving almost on its own, following a path she couldn't see but somehow knew was there. A constellation. A pattern. A map. And somewhere, deep within her, Ariel could feel it, the beginning of something bigger than herself. Something was changing, and the stars were the key. The days that followed were strange. It was as if the universe itself had decided to pay Ariel a little more attention than usual. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, her desire to find meaning in the chaos, but as the week went on, things started to feel different. The whispers in the hallways no longer seemed so distant. The teasing that had once stung now felt almost like an echo. And Devon? He kept coming around, asking more questions about astrology, about the stars, and about her mother. It was a small thing, really, nothing huge, nothing world-shattering. But Ariel couldn't shake the feeling that everything was shifting. And with it, she began to notice things she hadn't before. Things that worried her. It started on a Tuesday. Ariel had just finished her last class for the day, her head full of sketches and thoughts of the constellations. As usual, she made her way to the library, her sanctuary in the middle of the chaos of middle school. It was quiet, calm, everything the rest of the school wasn't. Ariel spent hours there, reading astrology books, researching star patterns, and listening to the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above her head. But today, as she entered the library, she noticed something different. Something out of place. Madison. Madison, the queen bee of Oakwood Middle School, was sitting at one of the tables, her phone out, a group of her friends huddled around her. They weren't laughing, but their voices were low and sharp, like the sound of knives slicing through the air. Ariel froze in the doorway, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up. She didn't want to hear what they were saying. She didn't want to find out what they were planning. But as always, curiosity got the best of her, and she couldn't resist. "I swear, it's like she thinks she's some kind of psychic or something," Madison's voice floated toward Ariel. Ariel's stomach dropped. She stepped back, almost in a panic, but before she could turn around and leave, Madison's voice rang out again, louder this time. "I don't get it. I mean, she's always talking about the stars and stuff. I heard she even talked to Devon about it like he cares. It's so weird. I bet she's just doing it for attention. Who even believes in that stuff?" The words stung, each one a sharp jab at her heart. Ariel wanted to disappear, to make herself invisible, to find some way to stop the world from spinning and leave her in peace. But there was nowhere to hide. Devon. Ariel had never seen him as someone who would entertain Madison's cruelty. He was different from the rest of them, right? But hearing Madison's words, she felt the doubt creeping in. She thought he had genuinely cared about what she said. But what if it had just been a joke to him? What if she had been foolish to believe that someone like him, someone who was popular and seemed so different from her, could ever really understand? Ariel turned away from the door and quickly headed toward the back of the library, her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to push the thoughts away, but they clung to her like a second skin. Was it possible? Was everything she had believed about herself, about the stars, just some fantasy she had created in her head to make herself feel better? The next day, Ariel found herself in another uncomfortable position. Devon had texted her after school the day before, asking if she could help him understand something about astrology. It was the kind of request that made Ariel feel hopeful, as though maybe someone else, finally, wanted to know what she had always known. But today, when she met him at the park after school, it didn't feel like the same conversation. Devon was quiet when she sat down beside him on the worn bench. His usual enthusiasm was replaced with an awkward silence. Ariel shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what was happening. "So, Devon said finally, his voice hesitant. "I was talking to Madison yesterday. And, we were just, talking about astrology and stuff." Ariel's stomach tightened. "What did she say?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. Devon looked away, clearly uncomfortable. She thinks it's all just nonsense, Like, no offense, but she said it's all fake, and you're just doing it for attention or something." Ariel's breath hitched. The words echoed in her head, each one sharper than the last. Her eyes stung, but she refused to let the tears come. Not now. Not in front of him. "I don't know, Ariel," Devon continued, his voice soft. "I didn't really know how to respond to that. I mean, I'm not saying it's fake. But I don't know if I get it." Ariel's hands tightened into fists in her lap. The stars felt further away now, distant and cold. The connection she had with them suddenly seemed fragile, like a thread that could snap at any moment. She had always known that others didn't believe in what she did, but this hurt in a way she hadn't expected. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. She felt the weight of it, the weight of the conflict inside her. On the one hand, she wanted to explain everything to Devon. She wanted him to understand. But on the other hand, she was tired of fighting for something that seemed so small in the grand scheme of things. "I guess I'll see you later," Ariel said quietly, standing up abruptly. Her voice trembled, but she didn't let him see it. She couldn't let him see the hurt that Madison's words had caused, or the doubt that was creeping in. The next few days were filled with more of the same. Ariel noticed the whispers growing louder in the hallways, the occasional glance thrown her way, followed by a laugh or a snicker. She began to feel the pressure of being different more acutely than ever. She couldn't escape it. It was everywhere. The doubts. The judgment. The constant feeling that she was out of place. But through it all, one thing kept pulling her forward: the stars. The drawings. The patterns. The connection. Even as the world around her seemed to fall apart, the stars never changed. They remained constant, like old friends who never left. And for some reason, Ariel couldn't let go of that. She had to keep going. For her mom. For herself. And maybe, just maybe, she was about to prove everyone wrong. Ariel's world felt like it was crumbling, each moment heavier than the last. The weight of the whispers and the laughter from her classmates pressed down on her chest, suffocating her. The stars, once her sanctuary, now felt distant and unreachable, as though even the cosmos were turning its back on her. But something shifted that Friday afternoon. She didn't know what, but as she sat in her room, staring at the same constellation map she had been working on for weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. A spark. Something inside her told her that she couldn't give up, not now. She pulled her chair closer to her desk and flicked on the small desk lamp, its light illuminating the pages filled with her carefully drawn sketches. Every constellation she had mapped out, every star she had charted, was a piece of something bigger. A message. But what was it? What was she missing? The sounds of the outside world. The laughter of her classmates, the voices of people she didn't know, felt muffled. They couldn't reach her. Ariel was alone now, lost in her own world, and for once, she wasn't bothered by it. She was used to the loneliness. It was a familiar feeling. But it also gave her the space to think, to piece together the puzzle that had been swirling in her mind. A few days earlier, she'd received an unexpected message from Devon. He wanted to meet her again, to talk more about astrology. Ariel hadn't responded immediately, unsure of where she stood with him. But after some time, she realized that this might be her chance to explain everything she'd been keeping inside for so long. On Saturday, she found herself waiting near the old oak tree in the park, where she and Devon had met the week before. The air was cool, the sky a faded blue, and Ariel could feel the earth beneath her feet grounding her, reminding her that she wasn't as lost as she sometimes felt. Devon arrived shortly after, looking hesitant as he approached. "Hey," he said quietly, a nervous smile tugging at his lips. "I'm sorry if I've been acting weird. I don't know, I didn't want to offend you." Ariel offered a small smile, though her heart was pounding in her chest. "It's okay," she said softly. "I get it. It's a lot to take in, isn't it?" Devon nodded, his expression serious. "Yeah. But you're right about one thing. I've been thinking about it a lot. More than I should have, probably. But, the stars, astrology, it's not just some weird thing anymore. I want to understand." Ariel's heart fluttered at his words. He wants to understand. She had always dreamed of this moment, where someone would take the time to listen, to understand what she felt in her bones. And now, here it was. But there was still so much she had to explain. "I've been studying astrology for years," Ariel began, her voice trembling slightly. "It's not just about the stars. It's about patterns, connections, cycles. There's a rhythm to everything. And sometimes, I feel like the stars are trying to tell me something. About my mom. About me." Devon listened intently, his eyes never leaving hers. There was no judgment in them, no skepticism. Just curiosity. Ariel felt herself calming, the tension in her chest loosening, as she spoke more about her mother's love for the stars, and how it had shaped her entire life. She told him about the first time she had looked up at the sky with her mom, how they had mapped out constellations together, how her mom had told her that the stars were her guides. "The thing is," Ariel said, "it's not just about belief. It's about connection. About feeling like you're part of something bigger. It's about remembering that even when everything feels dark, there's always light somewhere up there. That's what keeps me going." Devon didn't say anything for a long while. He just stared at her, as if processing everything she had just shared. Finally, he broke the silence. "That's really beautiful, Ariel," he said quietly. "I think I get it now. The stars aren't just something you look at, they're something you feel, aren't they?" Ariel nodded, a small tear slipping down her cheek. She hadn't expected him to understand. Not really. But he did. And for the first time in a long while, Ariel felt a spark of something she hadn't felt before. Hope. The days following their conversation felt like a whirlwind. Devon's attitude toward her had shifted. He wasn't teasing her anymore. He wasn't laughing. Instead, he'd started asking questions. Real questions. Questions about the stars, about astrology, about the patterns Ariel had been studying for so long. It was the kind of attention Ariel had always craved, but never expected to get. And with it, something else changed. She began to notice things she hadn't before. Things about herself. About her life. About the way she had been living in the shadows, hiding from the world around her. For the first time in forever, Ariel found herself wondering, what if the stars were leading me somewhere else? What if they were showing me something new? It was late one night, just after her grandmother had gone to bed, that Ariel sat at her desk and began drawing again. She didn't know why, but something inside her told her she had to. She had to get it out. With the quiet hum of her desk lamp as her only companion, Ariel sketched furiously, tracing lines across the page with her pencil. She felt the energy building inside her, urging her to continue. Every stroke seemed to pull her deeper into the rhythm of the universe, as though the stars themselves were guiding her hand. And then, she saw it. A pattern. A map. Not a map of the constellations she had studied so many times before, but something else. A map of her life. The lines connected in ways she hadn't imagined. The constellations weren't just patterns in the sky, they were pieces of her past, her present, and her future. Ariel felt a shiver run down her spine as she stared at the drawing in front of her. It was like a story, written in the stars, waiting to be discovered. Her heart raced as the realization hit her, this wasn't just about astrology anymore. It was about something bigger. Something she was meant to uncover. Ariel couldn't explain it. She didn't have the words. But for the first time, she felt like the universe was speaking directly to her. And she was ready to listen. As the stars twinkled overhead, Ariel couldn't shake the feeling that her journey had only just begun. And somewhere, deep within her, she knew that the answers she sought were closer than she had ever imagined. The universe, it seemed, had decided that now was the time for Ariel to face everything she had been avoiding. The small flickers of hope she had held onto over the past few days began to grow into something more substantial, more tangible. But as with any journey, the stars weren't just offering light, they were offering a test, a challenge, and Ariel was about to face it head-on. The day it all came to a head began like any other. The bell rang at Oakwood Middle School, signaling the end of the final class of the day. Ariel packed her bag slowly, not in a hurry to face the halls just yet. Her mind was still swimming with thoughts of the drawing she had made the night before, the map of her life, the one she was convinced had been shown to her for a reason. She had no idea what it meant or where it was leading, but something told her that it was important. She was standing by her locker when she saw Devon approach, a hesitant smile on his face. Ariel's stomach fluttered with the usual mix of excitement and unease. She had gotten used to their conversations over the past week, but today felt different. The energy in the air seemed to buzz, like static before a storm. "Hey, Ariel," Devon greeted, his voice soft but warm. I wanted to talk to you about something." "Sure," Ariel replied, trying to hide the nerves that suddenly twisted in her stomach. Devon glanced over his shoulder, making sure no one was watching before he lowered his voice. "It's about Madison." His eyes were troubled, as though he didn't quite know how to say what he needed to. Ariel's heart skipped a beat. She felt a knot form in her throat. She had known this moment was coming, she just didn't think it would hit her so hard. "What about her?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though it trembled slightly. Devon hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I'm not sure how to put this, but Madison wants to get the whole class to laugh at you. She's planning something, and I'm afraid you're going to get hurt." The words hit Ariel like a punch to the gut. She felt the ground beneath her feet shift, as if the earth had tilted sideways. All those whispers, the snickers, the teasing, it was all building to this. The one thing she had feared more than anything was about to come true. She tried to keep her composure, but inside, she was breaking. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice small. Devon shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. "Because I don't want you to be blindsided. I don't know if I can stop it, but I thought you should know." Ariel's mind raced. The room felt like it was closing in on her, and for a moment, she couldn't breathe. Madison. The one person who seemed to hold the power to make or break her high school life. Ariel had always known that Madison didn't believe in her astrology, but she hadn't thought she would go this far. And the worst part? The worst part was that Ariel didn't know who to trust anymore. Was Devon really her friend, or was he just another part of this cruel game? The thought gnawed at her, pulling her deeper into a sea of confusion. I don't know what to do," Ariel whispered, her voice barely audible as the pressure built up in her chest. "I've been trying to show them, to prove that this means something. But it's like they're just mocking me. All of them. Devon's face softened, his expression filled with sympathy. I get it, Ariel. I do. But this isn't the way. You don't need to prove anything to them. The stars aren't for them to understand. They're for you. Ariel's eyes welled up with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, not wanting Devon to see the cracks forming in her armor. But I thought if I could make them see what I see, they would understand. That maybe, just maybe, they would realize that the stars are real. But now they're just going to laugh. I'm going to be a joke. She felt a tightness in her throat, and for the first time in a long while, the weight of everything she had been carrying, everything she had tried to hide, seemed to crush her. I'm not enough, she thought. I can't make them see. I can't make them believe. Devon stepped closer, his voice firm, but gentle. You don't need them to believe, Ariel. You just need to believe in yourself. You know what the stars have shown you. And that's enough. You're stronger than you think. Ariel swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. She had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed. All her life, she had been hiding behind her drawings, behind the stars, behind the illusion of being strong. But now, standing here in the hallway with Devon, she felt like she was standing on the edge of something. Something big. Something that could change everything. The next day, as she walked into class, the tension in the air was palpable. She could feel the stares, the whispers, the eyes that followed her every move. Ariel tried to ignore it, to focus on the task at hand, but it was impossible. She knew what was coming. And then, it happened. As soon as the bell rang and everyone settled into their seats, Madison stood up, her voice ringing clear and sharp across the room. Hey, everyone, she called, flashing a mischievous grin. I thought it might be fun to have a little, astrology quiz. What do you say? Ariel's heart pounded in her chest as Madison turned toward her, her eyes glinting with something that wasn't kindness. Ariel's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, time seemed to slow down. The entire class was watching her, waiting for her reaction. Madison's smile widened as she continued, her tone dripping with sarcasm. So, Ariel, tell us all, what does your sign say about today? Are we going to get a storm of emotions or just another boring day? The laughter began almost immediately, and Ariel felt the heat of embarrassment flush her face. She tried to keep her composure, to stay strong, but the words felt like daggers. Every joke, every laugh, felt like a nail being driven into her heart. It was too much. She stood up quickly, her chair scraping against the floor as she backed away from the group. I don't need to explain myself to you, she said, her voice trembling. But there was something else, too. A fire, deep inside her, burning brighter than it ever had before. I don't need you to understand, she continued, her voice gaining strength. The stars will always be here, whether you believe in them or not. And if you can't see that, then that's your loss. With that, she turned and walked out of the room, the sound of her footsteps echoing in her ears. She wasn't sure where she was going, but for the first time in days, she felt a sense of freedom. The tears that had threatened to fall earlier were now replaced by something else, determination. She wasn't going to let Madison, or anyone else, define her anymore. Ariel didn't need anyone else's approval. She had the stars. And that was all she needed. Ariel's footsteps echoed in the empty hallway as she walked away from the classroom, her heart pounding with a mixture of emotions. The confrontation with Madison had felt like a punch to the gut, but it also sparked something deep inside her, something she hadn't realized she had been holding back for so long. It was anger, but it was also strength. The strength to stand up for herself, to defend her passion, and to finally, truly, believe in what she had always known was real. As she made her way outside, the cool air of the late autumn afternoon hit her skin. The trees in the schoolyard swayed gently, their leaves falling in soft spirals, and the sky above seemed to stretch out endlessly, like a vast canvas waiting to be painted. Ariel stopped near the edge of the field, where she often went to think. It was her space, her moment of quiet when everything felt a little less heavy. She pulled out her notebook and flipped to the last page where she had drawn the constellation map of her life. Her fingers brushed over the lines, tracing the paths of the stars she had carefully mapped out, and for the first time in days, she didn't feel the urge to hide the page. Instead, she felt a deep sense of connection to the patterns before her. They weren't just stars. They were the story of who she was, and where she had been, and maybe, just maybe, where she was going. Ariel sat down on the grass, her legs crossed beneath her, and began to sketch again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She didn't second-guess herself. She just let the pencil flow, connecting the dots, creating shapes, weaving a narrative that felt more real than any of the doubts she had carried for so long. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Ariel felt like she was starting to see things clearly, like the pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to fit together. Later that evening, as she sat at the kitchen table with her grandmother, Ariel couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed inside her. Her grandmother had been quiet most of the evening, but Ariel could sense the warmth in her gaze as she worked through the dishes. "Ariel," her grandmother said softly, turning away from the sink. "I'm proud of you." Ariel looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" "I saw what happened today," her grandmother continued, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've been watching you for a long time, and I've seen you struggle with what you believe in. The stars are a gift, Ariel. Your mother knew that. And she passed that gift on to you." Ariel's chest tightened at the mention of her mother. It had been months since she had thought about her in this way, but tonight, it felt like her presence was somehow close, like her mother's spirit was watching over her, reminding her of the importance of what she was doing. "I don't want to disappoint you," Ariel whispered, feeling the weight of her grandmother's words. I don't know if I'm strong enough to keep going, especially when everyone's laughing at me." Her grandmother walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder, offering the kind of comfort only a grandmother could give. "Ariel, my love, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. The stars already know who you are. Your mother knew it, too. And the truth is, you'll never know how many lives you'll touch just by being yourself, just by staying true to what you believe." Ariel felt the tears welling up again, but this time, they weren't filled with fear or doubt. They were tears of relief. Her grandmother was right. She didn't need anyone's validation. She had always had the stars, and they had always been there for her. With newfound clarity, Ariel spent the next few days reflecting on everything she had gone through. She had been mocked. She had been ridiculed. She had been pushed to the edge of giving up. But now, she was more determined than ever to keep going. She realized that her strength didn't come from the approval of others, and it didn't come from trying to prove herself. It came from the knowledge that she was connected to something far bigger than herself, the universe, the stars, and everything they represented. Ariel's next day at school was different. The weight of her previous fears had lifted, replaced by a quiet sense of power. When she walked into her homeroom, the usual whispers started up again. She heard Madison's mocking voice behind her, but this time, Ariel didn't flinch. She didn't even look back. As she took her seat, she pulled out her notebook and began drawing again. Slowly, she filled the page with the same intricate designs she had drawn before. But this time, there was no hesitation in her hand. No fear. The stars she drew weren't just dots, they were her allies, her strength, her connection to something bigger than herself. The bell rang, signaling the start of class, and for the first time in a long while, Ariel felt like she belonged. She felt grounded. By the time the day ended, Ariel had almost forgotten about the teasing. Almost. But as she was packing her bag at the end of the school day, she heard a voice behind her. "Ariel." It was Devon. She turned around, surprised to see him standing there, his hands shoved awkwardly in his pockets. "Hey," he said, giving her an unsure smile. "I just wanted to say. I think what you did yesterday was really brave." Ariel raised an eyebrow. "Brave? You mean walking out of the classroom?" Devon nodded, looking more serious than she had ever seen him. "Yeah. It was like you were telling them, I don't care what you think of me. And that's really powerful." Ariel's heart warmed. She hadn't realized it at the time, but maybe Devon had been right. Maybe, just maybe, walking out of that room wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a declaration of independence. A way to show the world, and herself, that she wouldn't let anyone define her. Not Madison, not anyone. "Thanks, Devon," Ariel said quietly. She smiled, genuinely this time, feeling a wave of gratitude for his support. "I think I'm finally starting to get it." Devon grinned, his usual playful demeanor returning. "Good. Because you're way cooler than the rest of them." Ariel laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. "Maybe I am," she said, "and that's okay with me." As she walked out of the school gates, Ariel felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The stars were still with her, and now, so was she. She didn't need the approval of others. She had her own belief, and that was enough. The journey had only just begun, but for the first time, Ariel felt ready. She wasn't afraid of what the world would throw at her. Because no matter what, the stars would always be there, guiding her forward. The days following the emotional breakthrough Ariel had experienced were strange. There was still tension in the air at school, but it was different now. Ariel wasn't walking through the hallways trying to avoid eyes, or shrinking into the background hoping not to be noticed. No, now she walked with a sense of quiet confidence, like someone who had finally discovered the strength they had been searching for all along. The stars, her map of the universe, had become her guide, and they had shown her the way. But despite her newfound sense of peace, she couldn't escape the constant whisper of doubt in the back of her mind. What if it wasn't enough? What if, after all this, she was still just the girl who believed in astrology? What if the stars didn't really have anything to offer her? The whispers came at night, usually when she lay in bed staring up at the ceiling. She would remind herself of the promises she'd made to herself, to believe, to stand tall, to not let the world define her. And yet, as the night stretched on, the doubts crept in. The day that would become the turning point started with a typical morning. Ariel grabbed her backpack and rushed to school, her mind running through the usual routine. She didn't expect anything out of the ordinary to happen, certainly not the shift that was about to take place. It was third period, and the class was gathering in the art room. Mrs. Donovan was known for her unconventional teaching methods. She wasn't one for strict assignments or rigid rules, she was all about letting students explore their creativity. That was why Ariel always looked forward to her art class, where she could escape into her drawings and let her imagination run free. But today was different. "All right, class," Mrs. Donovan announced with a smile. "Today, we're going to do something a little unusual. I want each of you to draw something that's meaningful to you, something that speaks to who you are, or something that represents your story." Ariel felt a spark of excitement. This was her chance to share something deep, something personal. The stars were part of who she was, and she had no intention of hiding that anymore. She pulled out her notebook and began sketching a new design, a constellation map, but this time it was more intricate, more detailed. She poured everything she had into the lines and curves of the stars, letting her pencil glide across the page with confidence. Each stroke felt like it was telling a piece of her story. As she worked, she couldn't help but notice the other students in the room. Some were drawing trees or abstract shapes. Others were sketching animals or people. But one thing was clear, no one else seemed to be drawing anything as personal as Ariel's design. She heard the sound of laughter and glanced over her shoulder. Madison, of course, was watching her. She had always been the type to make fun of anyone who dared to be different. Madison leaned over to her friend beside her, whispering something that made both of them giggle. Ariel tried to ignore it, focusing instead on her drawing. But then, she felt a tap on her shoulder. "Hey, Ariel," came a voice from behind her. It was Devon. She turned around, surprised. "Oh, hey. What's up?" Devon looked a little nervous, but there was something in his eyes that made Ariel pause. "I just wanted to tell you, that drawing you did the other day. The one with the stars." Ariel felt her heart skip a beat. "Yeah. Well," Devon continued, "I showed it to my friend in the library. And I don't know, she really liked it. She thought it was beautiful." Ariel blinked in surprise. "Really? You showed it to someone?" Devon nodded. "Yeah, and she wants to meet you. She's into astrology, too." Ariel felt her stomach flip. "You mean, she believes in it?" Devon smiled. "Yeah. And she thinks you're onto something big. She wants to talk to you about it." Ariel could hardly believe her ears. For the first time, someone else, someone outside of her small circle, was actually interested in what she had to say about astrology. She didn't know what to think. Was this what she had been waiting for? Was this the validation she had been hoping for? "Wow," Ariel said, her voice barely above a whisper. That's amazing." Devon smiled and patted her on the back. "I knew you had something special, Ariel. I'm glad you're finally starting to see it too." Ariel couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. Maybe this was the turning point she had been waiting for, this was her chance to connect with someone who shared her passion. This was the moment when things could finally change. After class, Devon led Ariel to the library, where she met his friend, Naomi. Naomi was a girl from another grade, but she had an air of confidence about her that Ariel immediately admired. She had long, curly hair that framed her face and bright eyes that seemed to sparkle with curiosity. She was holding a book about astrology, one that Ariel had read herself. "So, you're the one who's been making waves with those constellation maps?" Naomi asked, a smile playing on her lips. Ariel felt her cheeks flush but nodded. "Yeah, that's me." Naomi grinned. "I've seen your work. It's really something special. I don't think you fully realize what you have here. Most people don't get it, but you're onto something. Astrology isn't just about reading your horoscope, it's about understanding your place in the universe." Ariel felt a surge of relief wash over her. Finally, someone who understood. Someone who didn't see her as a joke, but as someone with knowledge, with insight. "You really think so?" Ariel asked, almost afraid to believe it. Naomi nodded. "Absolutely. And I'd love to help you take this further. Maybe we could work together. There's so much more to astrology than just what's in the stars, it's about energy, and connections, and how we can tap into it. I think you have the potential to do something huge with this." Ariel felt her heart swell with excitement. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. She wasn't just some oddball drawing stars in her notebook anymore. She was part of a community, part of something bigger. And the future, her future, suddenly felt full of endless possibilities. That evening, as she walked home, Ariel couldn't stop thinking about Naomi's words. She had always believed in astrology, but until now, it had felt like a solitary belief. A quiet passion that she had kept to herself, afraid of being ridiculed or dismissed. But now, everything was different. She wasn't just a girl with a weird hobby anymore. She was a person with a purpose. And for the first time, she felt like she was on the verge of something great. She wasn't sure where this path would take her, but one thing was clear, it was the beginning of something big. And this time, Ariel wasn't going to let anyone, not even Madison, stop her. The weeks that followed seemed to move by in a blur. Ariel found herself consumed by her new partnership with Naomi. What had once been a solitary interest, a hobby she had kept to herself, was now something much bigger. Naomi was eager to share her knowledge with Ariel, and they quickly began to delve into deeper aspects of astrology, uncovering things Ariel had never even considered. Naomi didn't just see the stars for what they were in the sky, she saw them as keys to understanding the energy of the universe, and to unlocking the mysteries of human connection. For Ariel, this was a revelation. All the time she had spent drawing her star maps, studying constellations, had been a search for something she couldn't name. She had thought it was just a personal connection to the universe, but now, she was beginning to see that astrology was far more profound. It was a way of understanding herself, her relationships, and her place in the world. Every day after school, Ariel would rush to meet Naomi at the library, where they would spend hours researching, reading books on astrology, and discussing everything from moon cycles to birth charts to planetary retrogrades. Naomi taught her how to read the birth charts of her friends, to understand how the stars influenced their personalities, and how to use astrology to improve her relationships with others. For the first time, Ariel began to see astrology not just as a way to understand herself, but as a tool to help others. But even as she grew more confident in her beliefs, she could feel the weight of the world pressing down on her. She still had to face the mockery. She still had to walk through the school hallways and hear the whispers, feel the eyes of her classmates on her back. Madison was relentless, and though Ariel no longer cared as much, there was still that nagging feeling in the back of her mind: what if she was wrong? What if she was just wasting her time with something that no one would ever understand? It was one of those days when the doubt crept back and that something unexpected happened. It started just like any other day. Ariel was sitting in her homeroom, quietly scribbling in her notebook, trying to ignore the murmurs that always seemed to surround her. The usual crowd of students were chatting, gossiping, but her focus remained on her work, on the map she was creating, connecting constellations into intricate patterns that felt like they were coming to life beneath her fingertips. Then, as if on cue, the door to the classroom opened, and Madison sauntered in. She had that familiar sneer on her face, the one that always made Ariel want to shrink into herself, but this time, something was different. Madison wasn't alone. She had two other girls with her, one of whom Ariel didn't recognize. "Hey, Ariel," Madison called in her usual mocking tone. "I hope you're not too busy stargazing or whatever. We've got something for you." Ariel felt her stomach drop. She had no idea what was coming, but she didn't like the look in Madison's eyes. The girls approached her desk, and for a moment, there was an uncomfortable silence. Ariel could feel the eyes of the whole class on her. The tension was thick. "I've been hearing things," Madison said, leaning over Ariel's desk with a smirk. "People say you think the stars are, like, guiding you or something. That you actually believe in this astrology stuff." Ariel swallowed, trying to remain calm. "I do believe in it," she said quietly. "It's something that's important to me." Madison's eyes gleamed. "Well, that's cute. But I'm just here to tell you that nobody cares. You're just going to keep looking like a weirdo." Before Ariel could respond, Madison stepped back, and the other girl with her, the one Ariel didn't recognize, stepped forward. She was tall, with short blonde hair and a confident air about her. She smiled at Ariel, her expression warm but also knowing. "I think Madison's wrong," the girl said softly, her voice calm but firm. "I actually think astrology is fascinating. I've been reading about it for a while now, and I think there's something to it. It's a way to really understand yourself and the world." Ariel's heart skipped a beat. She had expected another round of ridicule, but here was someone she didn't even know, standing up for her beliefs. The girl extended her hand. "I'm Lisa," she said. "I'd really love to hear more about what you believe. Maybe you could teach me something about it." Ariel blinked, completely taken aback. Madison's smirk faltered, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned on her heel and walked away, clearly irritated by the turn of events. "Sure," Ariel said, a bit hesitant but feeling a surge of something she hadn't felt in a long time: acceptance. "I'd love to. After school, Lisa and Ariel sat together in the courtyard, the autumn sun casting long shadows on the grass. It felt surreal to Ariel, sitting with someone who didn't think she was strange for believing in astrology. Lisa asked questions, eager to learn, and Ariel was happy to share her knowledge, everything she had learned from Naomi, everything she had discovered on her own. The conversation flowed easily, and for the first time in a long while, Ariel felt a sense of camaraderie. She wasn't the odd one out anymore. She wasn't the only one who understood the stars. And she didn't have to hide that part of herself anymore. Over the next few weeks, more and more students began to approach Ariel. Some were curious about astrology, others just wanted to hear her thoughts on their birth charts. It was like a spark had been lit, and suddenly, people who had once ridiculed her were now intrigued by what she had to offer. Even Madison, though still distant, seemed to have backed off, no longer mocking her as openly as before. But it wasn't just the students who were noticing Ariel's transformation. Her teachers, too, began to take notice. Mrs. Donovan, the art teacher, had been one of the first to see Ariel's potential. She had always praised her for her creativity, but now, she saw something even more powerful in her student. One afternoon after class, Mrs. Donovan pulled Ariel aside. "You know," Mrs. Donovan said with a thoughtful smile, "I've been watching you. You've really grown over the past few weeks, haven't you?" Ariel looked at her, a bit confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean your confidence. You're no longer hiding in the background. You've been drawing with so much more purpose, and I see how passionate you are about astrology. That's rare, Ariel. I'm proud of you for embracing who you are." Ariel's cheeks flushed with pride. "Thank you, Mrs. Donovan. It's not always easy, but I'm starting to believe in it. In myself." Mrs. Donovan smiled, her eyes twinkling. "I think that's the first step, my dear. You're going to do amazing things." That night, Ariel sat on her bed, her notebook open in front of her. She was still processing everything that had happened over the past few weeks. It felt like the universe was aligning, like the stars had guided her to this moment. She wasn't just standing tall anymore, she was thriving. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, Ariel felt ready. She wasn't just the girl who believed in astrology. She was someone who had found her voice, her purpose. And nothing, no one, was going to take that away from her. As the school year continued, Ariel's life seemed to fall into a new rhythm. With Naomi's mentorship, the support from Lisa, and the gradually shifting attitude of her classmates, Ariel's world felt full of possibility. But, as with any story of growth and change, there was still a lingering tension beneath the surface, a tension Ariel couldn't quite shake. For the first time, people were genuinely interested in her passion for astrology. Her newfound confidence had caught the attention of not just her peers, but also her teachers. Mrs. Donovan had even encouraged her to submit a few of her star maps to a local art contest. Everything felt like it was falling into place, almost too perfectly. But the weight of expectation began to grow heavier as people started to look to her for answers. Suddenly, she wasn't just Ariel, the girl who loved astrology. She was Ariel the astrologer, the one who could interpret the stars, who could chart the paths of the planets and tell people what to expect from the universe. For a while, this was thrilling, a validation of everything she had been working towards. But the more people came to her with questions, about their relationships, their futures, their careers, the more Ariel began to feel the pressure of her role. It started with small requests. Devon, who had become one of her closest friends, asked her to interpret his birth chart. He was curious about his personality and how the stars influenced his path. At first, Ariel was thrilled to dive into his chart, eager to share what she had learned. But as she dug deeper into his chart, something felt off. There was so much pressure on her to give him answers, to explain the nuances of his life based on his astrological sign. What if she got it wrong? What if she didn't have the wisdom to help him? That nagging doubt crept back into her mind. She wasn't a professional astrologer, she was just a 12-year-old girl, learning as she went. And the more people relied on her, the more she felt like an imposter. But the requests kept coming. One by one, people asked her to read their charts, to tell them what the stars said about their future. Each time, Ariel felt a little more pressure building in her chest. She wasn't just sharing her passion anymore, she was being expected to predict the future, to give people answers that were sometimes beyond her understanding. It was the following Tuesday when Ariel found herself sitting at lunch with Lisa, trying to process her latest request. Amber, a girl from the popular crowd, had asked her to interpret her birth chart. Amber wasn't exactly known for being kind to Ariel in the past, and her sudden interest in astrology felt strange. "What do you think Amber wants with her chart?" Ariel asked, leaning back in her seat and poking at her lunch absent-mindedly. "She hasn't exactly been friendly to me before." Lisa glanced up, thinking for a moment. "You never know. Maybe she's just curious. People are starting to take astrology more seriously. Besides, it sounds like she really admires you." Ariel didn't respond right away, her mind still wrapped in the confusion of Amber's request. After a moment, she sighed. "I'm just not sure. I feel like I'm not really qualified for this. What if I make a mistake?" Lisa looked at her with understanding. "You're not doing this to be a professional, Ariel. You're doing this because it's your passion. You share what you know. You share what resonates with you. People come to you because they trust you, not because they think you have all the answers." Ariel smiled faintly, appreciating her friend's perspective, but the uncertainty still lingered. There was a fine line between passion and expectation, and Ariel was starting to feel like she was crossing it. That afternoon, after school, Ariel sat at her desk, surrounded by her astrology books and her notebook, trying to piece together the information for Amber's chart. She wanted to get it right, she wanted to give Amber answers. But the more she read, the more overwhelmed she became. There was so much to interpret, so many aspects of a person's chart to consider. It wasn't just about sun signs, it was about the moon, the rising sign, the positions of Venus and Mars. Every detail seemed to matter, and the pressure of getting it perfect was suffocating. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. "I can do this," she whispered to herself. "I just need to trust myself." As she worked, her mind drifted back to the very first time she had drawn her constellation maps. Back when she had started all of this, there hadn't been any pressure, any expectation. She had simply been drawn to the stars, fascinated by their patterns and how they connected to the world. She hadn't cared what others thought. It was just her and the stars. Ariel closed her eyes for a moment, trying to reconnect with that feeling of freedom. She had loved astrology because it had given her a sense of peace, a sense of wonder. But now, she felt like it was becoming more of a burden. She didn't want to lose that connection. She didn't want to let the weight of everyone else's expectations overshadow her passion. When she opened her eyes again, her gaze fell on the notebook in front of her, filled with her sketches and notes. The stars were still there, waiting. And in that moment, she realized something important: she didn't need to have all the answers. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to keep doing what she loved, to keep trusting herself and the wisdom that the universe had given her. The next day at school, when Amber approached her again, Ariel smiled. She was still nervous about interpreting Amber's chart, but she was determined to approach it from a place of calm. She was no longer going to let the pressure overwhelm her. "Hey, Amber," Ariel said, her voice steady but warm. "I've been looking into your chart. It's actually really interesting." Amber raised an eyebrow, surprised by the lack of hesitation in Ariel's tone. "Oh, really? I thought you might not be willing to do it after everything." Ariel shook her head. "Astrology isn't about judging people. It's about understanding them. And I'm glad you're interested in learning more." As they sat down together, Ariel explained the aspects of Amber's chart she had focused on, speaking with the same passion that had drawn her to astrology in the first place. Amber listened, her initial skepticism beginning to fade as she heard the depth of Ariel's insights. By the end of their conversation, Ariel felt lighter. She wasn't sure if Amber would become a believer in astrology or not, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that she had stayed true to herself. She had given her best, shared her knowledge, and trusted in the process. Later that evening, Ariel reflected on the day's events. She still felt the weight of expectation, but it no longer felt suffocating. She was learning to set boundaries, to share her passion in a way that felt authentic and true to who she was. And with each step, she was getting closer to finding her voice, not just as an astrologer, but as a person. The stars had always been her guide, but now, she was beginning to understand that she was her own guide as well. The journey was still long, and there would be challenges ahead, but Ariel felt ready to face them. The feeling of being on the edge of something great kept Ariel awake at night. She'd always believed that astrology was more than just a hobby, more than a passing fascination. It was a way to understand the world, to see the deeper connections between people, the universe, and the forces that shaped everything. But now, as the spotlight turned more and more toward her, Ariel began to wonder. What happens when people rely on you for answers they think they need, but you're still learning yourself? It had all started so simply, sharing a passion, drawing maps of the constellations, reading charts in secret. But the world, her classmates, and even her teachers were starting to ask more of her. She had been thrust into a role she wasn't sure she was prepared for. Ariel's conversations with Naomi had become more frequent, her voice filled with uncertainty. What if I'm not ready for this? What if I'm wrong about everything? I'm just a 12-year-old girl. Who am I to give people advice on their futures? Naomi had listened patiently, nodding thoughtfully. Ariel, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the answers. No one does. The beauty of astrology is that it's about discovering and understanding, both for yourself and for others. It's a lifelong journey, and you don't need to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. But as comforting as Naomi's words were, they didn't quite soothe the constant doubts gnawing at Ariel's mind. She wasn't sure how long she could balance the pressure to be the expert with the reality of still being a student, still learning, still growing. Every new request to read a birth chart, every new classmate seeking her guidance, felt like a step deeper into unknown territory. She wasn't sure if she was ready to become the person they were expecting her to be. The tipping point came unexpectedly. It was a Monday, and Ariel had just finished lunch when she received a text from Amber. Amber had been distant since their conversation about astrology, and Ariel hadn't heard from her much. But now, Amber was asking for something. Something big. Hey, Ariel, can you help me with something really important? I've been thinking about my relationship with Ryan, and I'm not sure if we're meant to be together. Can you look at our charts and tell me what you think? Ariel's stomach twisted. Relationships. She had always read about love compatibility in astrology, but this was real life. She wasn't an expert. What if she gave Amber the wrong advice? What if she said something that made things worse? Relationships were messy and complicated. Astrology could give insights, but it couldn't predict the future. It couldn't make decisions for people. Despite her hesitation, Ariel felt the weight of Amber's request, the pull of her own desire to help. She knew Amber wasn't the only one struggling with uncertainty. She'd seen it in the way people looked at her lately, the hope in their eyes that she would somehow have the answers they were looking for. Later that afternoon, Ariel sat at her desk, staring at Amber and Ryan's birth charts. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. As she scanned the charts, she realized how complex astrology was. There were so many factors to consider: moon signs, rising signs, aspects between planets. A single placement could make all the difference in a relationship. Ariel closed her eyes, trying to clear her mind. She couldn't do this. She couldn't put herself in a position where her words could change someone's life. She wasn't a professional. She wasn't ready. Her heart raced in her chest as she remembered the words Naomi had said, "It's not about being perfect, it's about helping others see themselves." But was she ready to help someone else navigate something so deeply personal? Was she prepared to be that source of guidance, to tell someone about their future, their happiness? She knew what Naomi meant, but it felt like too much to handle. It felt like she was stepping into waters too deep for her. Ariel let out a long, shaky breath and typed a message back to Amber. "Amber, I'm really honored that you trust me with this, but I want to be honest with you. I'm still learning, and I'm not sure if I'm the right person to give you the answers you're looking for. I can help you understand your chart, but I can't tell you whether or not you and Ryan are meant to be together. That's something only you can figure out." She pressed send, holding her breath as she waited for Amber's response. The uncertainty in her chest grew, but she knew this was the right choice. She wasn't ready to bear that responsibility. To Ariel's surprise, Amber's response was kind. "I get it, Ariel. I just wanted to know what the stars said. I understand. Thanks for being honest." Ariel smiled to herself, feeling a little lighter. Maybe she hadn't fixed everything for Amber, but she had made the right call. She hadn't promised something she couldn't deliver. And that, she realized, was more important than anything. The next day at school, Ariel felt a quiet strength she hadn't felt before. As she walked through the hallways, she no longer felt the weight of expectation bearing down on her so heavily. People still looked at her with interest, but it didn't feel like a burden anymore. She was still Ariel, the girl who loved astrology, who loved to draw, who loved to understand the universe. And, just like her charts, her life was still a work in progress. After school, Ariel and Naomi met up in the library as usual. Ariel felt an overwhelming need to share everything that had happened in the past few days, the doubts, the text from Amber, and the choice she had made. Naomi listened quietly, her expression thoughtful as Ariel spoke. When she finished, Naomi smiled gently. "You did the right thing, Ariel. You didn't let the pressure of others change who you are or force you to make a decision you weren't comfortable with. That's the real power of astrology, not in giving people answers, but in helping them find their own path." Ariel felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She didn't need to have all the answers. She didn't need to be perfect. What mattered was that she was true to herself, true to the wisdom she had, and honest with others about what she could and couldn't do. As they packed up their books and prepared to leave, Naomi added one last piece of advice. "Remember, the stars don't tell us exactly what's going to happen, they just guide us. They show us potential, and they help us understand ourselves. You don't have to have everything figured out. Just trust yourself, and the path will unfold." Ariel nodded, her heart lighter than it had been in days. She had a long way to go, but she was finally beginning to trust in her own journey, in her own wisdom. And as she walked out of the library, the sky outside seemed just a little bit brighter, the stars a little clearer. There was no need to have all the answers. Sometimes, it was enough to simply be open to the journey. Ariel had never felt more alive than she did now, standing on the edge of something she couldn't fully comprehend. The pressure of being Ariel the astrologer was still there, but it had evolved. It wasn't about having the answers anymore. It was about understanding how to navigate the space between certainty and doubt, how to let the stars guide her without relying on them to solve all the problems in her life. Yet, as much as Ariel was finding comfort in her own journey, there was still a part of her that felt disconnected from the rest of the world. The whispers and the expectations were always there, no matter how hard she tried to distance herself. She began to wonder, would she ever be able to escape that feeling of being under a microscope? The truth was, Ariel still didn't know what to make of everything. She was just a 12-year-old girl with a passion for astrology, trying to make sense of a world that was both full of wonder and full of pressure. It wasn't the astrology she was struggling with, it was the people, the reactions, the expectations. It was the beginning of November when things started to shift again. One morning, Ariel was walking through the halls of her school when she saw it, a brightly colored flyer taped to the wall outside the cafeteria. It read, "Astrology Club Meeting, come learn about the stars, your signs, and the future. Open to all students. First meeting this Friday." Ariel stared at it, a mix of excitement and anxiety stirring in her chest. An astrology club? Was this a sign? A part of her was thrilled at the thought of connecting with other people who shared her passion. But another part of her was apprehensive. The pressure of being the astrologer was already starting to feel overwhelming. Would joining a club make it worse? Was she ready to share her passion with so many people? She was still processing her thoughts when Lisa came up beside her. "Hey, I saw the flyer too," Lisa said, smiling. "What do you think? You should totally go for it. You'd be amazing leading a club like that." Ariel's mind was racing. Could she really do it? Could she run a club about something she loved, without losing sight of the reasons she started practicing astrology in the first place? She wasn't sure, but the idea of bringing people together, of creating a space where they could explore the stars, felt like it could be something good. "I don't know, Lisa," Ariel replied, her voice quiet. "What if I'm not ready? What if I fail?" Lisa raised an eyebrow. "What's the worst that could happen? You try, and it doesn't work out. But I don't think that's going to happen. You're passionate, and that's all you need. People will follow you because you're real." Ariel hesitated, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the outline of the flyer. "But what if they expect me to have all the answers? What if they think I know more than I do?" Lisa's smile softened. "That's the thing, Ariel. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to show up and share what you know. And trust that you'll figure out the rest as you go." Ariel exhaled slowly, considering Lisa's words. She was right. She didn't have to be perfect. She just had to be herself. That was the whole point of astrology, wasn't it? It was about learning and discovering, not about having every detail mapped out. She took a deep breath and made a decision. "I'm going to do it," she said, a new sense of resolve in her voice. "I'm going to go to the meeting and see what happens." Friday arrived faster than Ariel expected. She spent the morning in class, her mind constantly drifting to the upcoming astrology club meeting. Her heart beat faster every time she thought about it. She was both excited and terrified. What would people think of her? Would they expect her to be some kind of expert? Could she handle the responsibility? But as soon as the final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, all those doubts seemed to fade away. She could hear voices and laughter spilling out of the cafeteria as she approached. She paused for a moment, looking at the door and wondering if she should just turn around. But then, she remembered Lisa's words, "You don't have to have all the answers. Just show up." Taking a deep breath, Ariel walked into the cafeteria, where a group of students were already gathered around a long table, some chatting excitedly while others were flipping through astrology books. Ariel hesitated for a moment, scanning the room. Naomi was sitting at one of the tables, waving at her enthusiastically. Ariel smiled, grateful for her friend's support. "Hey, Ariel," Naomi called. "Come sit with us. We were just talking about sun signs. You should totally help us out." Feeling a little more at ease, Ariel made her way over to Naomi's table. As she sat down, she looked around at the other students, many of whom she didn't recognize. They were all interested in astrology for different reasons. Some seemed fascinated by the idea of learning more about their personalities, while others were eager to figure out how astrology could help them understand their relationships. She suddenly realized that she wasn't just surrounded by classmates, she was surrounded by people who were just as curious about the stars as she was. The teacher, Mr. Thompson, was the one who started the meeting. "Welcome to the first official meeting of the Astrology Club," he said, clapping his hands together to get everyone's attention. "We're here to learn, share, and explore the mysteries of the universe. So let's start with something simple. Who here can tell me their sun sign?" Hands shot up immediately, and Ariel found herself raising her own hand. When it was her turn, she took a deep breath and stood up, her heart racing a little faster. "I'm an Aquarius," she said, her voice steady. "And for those of you who don't know, that means I'm a visionary and a bit of a dreamer. But I also value independence and love learning about new things. Sometimes, I get lost in my own thoughts." She sat back down, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on her. For a moment, she felt exposed, but then she saw the smiles around the table. People were genuinely interested. They weren't expecting perfection. They were there to learn, to discover together. As the meeting continued, Ariel found herself speaking more and more, sharing what she knew about astrology, her passion shining through in every word. She wasn't just the astrologer anymore. She was Ariel, a girl who had a love for the stars and was willing to share it with others, no matter where the journey took her. By the end of the meeting, Ariel was buzzing with excitement. For the first time, she didn't feel like she had to have all the answers. She just had to show up, be herself, and let the stars lead the way. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Ariel's decision to join the astrology club had opened a door she hadn't expected. The stars, once her private refuge, were now a shared space, a place where her passion became a bridge between herself and others. The thrill of exploring astrology with new friends had given her a sense of purpose she hadn't anticipated. She wasn't just helping people navigate their own signs, she was discovering new layers of herself along the way. But the excitement didn't come without its challenges. As the club grew, so did the expectations. Ariel began to feel the weight of being a leader, even though she hadn't intended to take on that role. It was one thing to share her passion in small, safe conversations with friends like Naomi, but now there were new faces, new voices, and new questions. Every Friday after school, the astrology club grew in size, attracting more and more curious students. Some came for the insights, others were simply intrigued by the idea of understanding the universe through the lens of the stars. It was exhilarating and overwhelming all at once. One afternoon after club meeting, as Ariel packed up her notes, she found herself face to face with Tasha, a girl from her class who hadn't shown much interest in astrology until now. Tasha had always been quiet, reserved, the kind of person who faded into the background. But now, her eyes were wide with curiosity. "Ariel, I've been thinking," Tasha said, her voice tentative but earnest. "I've been looking at my chart, and I think I'm starting to get it. Like, I understand some things I didn't before. But I'm confused about something." Ariel raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's on your mind?" Tasha hesitated, her fingers tapping nervously on the desk. "Well, I've been looking at my Venus sign, and I don't get it. It says I'm an Aries in Venus, and I don't know what that means for my relationships. Does that mean I'm bad at them? I mean, I'm not really the flirty type, and my past relationships have always been kind of complicated." Ariel's heart sank a little. She'd seen this kind of vulnerability before, but this time, it felt personal. Tasha's words echoed something deeper, a struggle not just with astrology but with understanding her place in the world. Ariel knew she needed to be careful here. This wasn't just about interpreting a chart, this was about someone seeking to understand themselves. She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. It's not about being good or bad at relationships. Venus in Aries means you approach love with passion and intensity, but that doesn't always look the same for everyone. It might make you a little impulsive or direct, but that's not a bad thing. You might just need to learn to balance that energy with patience and understanding. It's about learning how to embrace who you are. Tasha nodded, absorbing the information slowly. "So, it's not a bad thing?" "No, not at all," Ariel replied with a reassuring smile. "It just means you have a unique way of showing love. There's no one right way to do it. Tasha smiled, a little brighter now, though still uncertain. Thanks, Ariel. I really appreciate it. I think I need to rethink how I approach things. The conversation with Tasha stuck with Ariel long after the club meeting ended. It was a reminder of why she had started in the first place, not to become an expert, not to be the one with all the answers, but to help others find the wisdom they already had within themselves. It was a humbling reminder that the stars didn't dictate who people were, they only helped illuminate parts of themselves they might not have noticed before. That evening, Ariel sat down in her room, the quiet of the night wrapping around her. Her notebook was open in front of her, filled with drawings of constellations and charts, but her thoughts were far from the stars. She was still thinking about Tasha, about the way she had come to her for answers. It made her wonder how many people out there were grappling with their own confusion, with their own desire for clarity, just like Tasha had. Ariel's mind drifted to her own journey. She had always been a dreamer, a girl who sought answers in the stars. But now, she was starting to realize that sometimes the most important lessons didn't come from the charts themselves, they came from the connections she made, the conversations she had, and the way she helped others find their own light. The following Friday, the Astrology Club was buzzing with excitement. Word had spread, and the club had gained even more members. Ariel couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as she walked into the cafeteria and saw the familiar faces gathered around the table, eager to learn. But there was one face she hadn't expected to see, Amber. She stood by the door, looking hesitant as she scanned the room. Ariel's heart skipped a beat. It had been a while since she had spoken to Amber, and the awkwardness between them still lingered. Their last conversation had been about astrology, but it had also been about their friendship, and Ariel wasn't sure where they stood anymore. Ariel hesitated, but then she remembered Naomi's words, just show up. So, with a deep breath, she walked over to Amber. Hey, Ariel said, offering a small but genuine smile. Glad you could make it. Amber's face softened, though she still looked a little nervous. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about the stars and everything. I wanted to learn more. I was hoping you could help me. Ariel nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of uncertainty in her chest. Of course. What's on your mind? Amber glanced around at the group before speaking in a low voice. I've been thinking about my moon sign. I'm a Capricorn, and I don't know how that fits with everything else. Does it mean I'm not supposed to show emotion? Ariel smiled knowingly. Capricorn moons can be really reserved, but that doesn't mean you don't have emotions. It just means you process them differently. You might tend to keep them to yourself or deal with them privately, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being a little more controlled. It's about finding balance. Amber seemed to relax at her words. Thanks, Ariel. That makes sense. As the meeting progressed, Ariel found herself immersed in conversations with students. Some seeking clarity on their love lives, others looking for insight into their friendships or careers. The questions were endless, but for the first time, Ariel didn't feel the pressure to have all the answers. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to be there, to help them discover the answers within themselves. By the end of the meeting, Ariel felt a strange sense of fulfillment. The club wasn't about her leading the way, it was about guiding others toward their own understanding, their own journeys. It wasn't always about giving people the answers they expected, but helping them find the path that worked for them. And as she walked out of the cafeteria that day, the stars in her mind felt a little closer, a little clearer. She didn't know where the journey would take her, but she knew one thing for sure, she was no longer afraid to show up, to share what she knew, and to trust that the path would unfold as it was meant to. Ariel woke up early the next Saturday, the weight of the world pressing down on her. It wasn't the kind of weight that came from something heavy or difficult, it was the kind that came from expectations, both her own and others. She had spent the last few days preparing for something that felt bigger than anything she had done before. The first official Astrology Club presentation. The members of the club were growing more and more eager, and this Friday, they had decided to hold a meeting where each of them would give a short presentation on their sign and what they had learned. Ariel had volunteered to start. As the day went on, she couldn't shake the nervousness building inside of her. What if she messed up? What if the things she had said before, her intuitive understanding of astrology, didn't resonate with everyone? What if, for once, she couldn't find the right words? She had already felt the weight of being seen as the expert, and now, standing at the front of the room, there would be no escaping it. Ariel had spent the whole week preparing. She wrote her notes, made her presentation slides, and practiced in front of the mirror, her hands trembling with every word. She knew the material, she knew it inside and out. But the fear of failure, the thought of making a mistake in front of her peers, lingered like a cloud over her. The clock seemed to slow as she walked into school that morning, the buzzing hallways barely registering in her mind. She wasn't sure if she wanted to run away or face her fears head-on. She had been to the club meetings before, had spoken freely and shared her knowledge. But this felt different. This was the first time she would stand in front of the club as the one leading the way, and it terrified her. Naomi, as always, seemed to sense her unease the moment they saw each other. "Hey," Naomi said, nudging Ariel gently. "Are you okay? You're looking a little pale." Ariel gave her a small, tight smile. "Yeah, just a little nervous. I'm presenting today, and I'm not sure I'm ready." Naomi raised an eyebrow but didn't push her. Instead, she grinned. "You're going to do great. Remember what you told me, just show up and trust yourself. You know more than you think you do." Ariel nodded, but the knot in her stomach didn't loosen. As she walked to the cafeteria later that day, her heart continued to race. She could hear the low hum of chatter as she stepped inside, the familiar group of students already sitting at their usual table. The smell of the cafeteria food filled the air, but Ariel could barely taste it. All she could think about was the presentation. When the meeting started, she could tell everyone was excited. The club members were buzzing with energy, ready to dive into what was coming next. As the group settled down, Mr. Thompson gave a warm welcome. "Today's a big day," Mr. Thompson said with a smile. "We're going to hear from Ariel first. She's going to talk about her sun sign, Aquarius, and how it influences her personality and how she interacts with the world. Ariel, take it away." Ariel took a deep breath, her hands clammy as she stood up. She briefly caught Naomi's encouraging gaze before turning toward the room. The weight of all the eyes on her hit her, but she reminded herself to focus on the task at hand. She started slowly, her voice shaky at first, but she soon found her rhythm as she began talking about the traits of Aquarians, their visionary qualities, their love for independence, and their sometimes eccentric tendencies. As she spoke, she found herself sinking into the comfort of the material. She had studied astrology for so long that it felt like second nature. The nervousness began to subside, and by the time she was halfway through, she was completely engrossed in the subject. She was no longer focused on the fact that she was presenting in front of a group, she was simply sharing something she loved. "I know," Ariel said with a slight smile, "that as an Aquarius, I sometimes come off as a bit distant or aloof. But that's not because I don't care, it's just that I tend to be more focused on big ideas than on small details. I can get lost in my thoughts. But I think that's also why I'm so passionate about astrology. It's a way for me to make sense of the world, to find meaning in the chaos." Her voice steadied with each sentence, and she was surprised to see the group listening so intently. The room was quiet, all eyes on her, and for the first time, it felt like she was in control. She wasn't a stranger to speaking in front of people, but there was something different about this moment. It wasn't about impressing anyone or giving them what they expected. It was about sharing a piece of herself with people who wanted to hear it. As she finished, there was a brief silence, and then the room erupted into applause. Ariel blinked, taken aback. She hadn't expected that kind of reception. Her heart raced, but this time, it was with a sense of relief. She had done it. She had stepped into the role she was afraid of, and it hadn't crushed her. In fact, it had empowered her. "Great job, Ariel." Naomi called from the table, her voice filled with pride. "You nailed it." Ariel's smile widened, and her nerves finally began to ease. It wasn't just the applause that made her feel good. It was the fact that she had faced her fear, stepped up to the challenge, and come out stronger on the other side. She had done something she thought she couldn't do. The rest of the meeting flowed smoothly. Other members of the club shared their presentations, discussing their own signs with varying degrees of confidence. Some were shy, others more animated, but Ariel felt a sense of community building in the room. The Astrology Club was no longer just a collection of people interested in astrology, it had become a group of friends, all eager to learn from each other. As the meeting wrapped up, Mr. Thompson stood up and clapped his hands together. "Well done, everyone. You all did fantastic today. Ariel, I just wanted to say that you really set the tone for this group. You've created an environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing and learning. That's the kind of energy we need in a club." Ariel's cheeks flushed with pride. She hadn't expected that kind of recognition, but it felt good to know that her efforts had made an impact. That night, Ariel sat on the edge of her bed, reflecting on everything that had happened. She wasn't sure what the future held for her or the club, but for the first time in a long while, she felt certain about one thing: she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She had faced her fears, shared her passions, and connected with others in a way she hadn't expected. And that was enough. She picked up her journal and scribbled a quick note to herself before closing the book. Don't be afraid to show up. Even when you're scared, even when you don't feel ready, just show up. The universe will guide you. Ariel smiled as she closed her eyes, the stars above her twinkling softly. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she was ready. She had already taken the first step. The morning air felt cooler than usual as Ariel stepped into the school the following Monday. The echoes of her successful presentation still lingered in her mind, giving her an almost victorious glow. She walked with a newfound confidence, her head high, as though the weight of her past insecurities had been shed. However, little did she know, a new challenge was waiting just around the corner. It started in the cafeteria. Ariel had barely found her seat at the usual table when she noticed something off, something she couldn't immediately put her finger on. Naomi, who usually sat beside her, was instead sitting across the room, chatting with some of the other club members. At first, Ariel thought nothing of it, assuming Naomi was simply talking to someone else. But as the minutes ticked by, the strange distance between them grew more pronounced. Naomi wasn't looking at her, wasn't engaging, and it started to feel like there was an unspoken tension between them. Ariel's stomach churned with unease. Had she said something wrong? Was there something about her presentation that bothered Naomi? She couldn't remember anything that might have caused this sudden shift, but her mind was racing with possibilities. For a moment, she almost convinced herself that she had done something to upset her best friend. The rest of the day passed by in a blur, but that nagging feeling stayed with her. At lunch, Ariel watched as Naomi and the other club members continued to gather, laughing and talking, but Ariel remained on the sidelines. She tried to catch Naomi's eye, but Naomi seemed too engrossed in a conversation with Amber to even notice. It was strange. For the past few weeks, Naomi had been her rock, her unwavering support in the midst of her fears. To see her so distant now felt like an unraveling thread in a tapestry she had worked so hard to weave. By the time the bell rang for the final class of the day, Ariel's anxiety had grown to a point where she could hardly focus on the lesson. Her mind was preoccupied, running through every conversation, every gesture Naomi had made since the presentation. Nothing seemed to make sense. Later that afternoon, Ariel was walking out of the building when she saw Naomi again, standing by the lockers with a group of students, laughing a little too loudly. She hesitated at first, then made her way over. "Naomi, can we talk for a sec?" Ariel asked, her voice quiet but firm. Naomi turned at the sound of her name, but there was something in her expression that made Ariel's heart sink. Naomi's smile was faint, her eyes avoiding Ariel's gaze. "Oh, hey," Naomi said, shifting awkwardly. "What's up?" Ariel felt her chest tighten. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. "You've been kind of distant lately. Is everything okay?" Naomi stiffened slightly, and the brief moment of silence felt like an eternity. Finally, she shrugged. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just been a little busy with stuff." "Busy?" Ariel echoed, trying to keep her voice steady. "With what? You've been hanging out with Amber and the others more than with me. Did I do something wrong?" The question hung in the air between them, charged with the unspoken tension that had been building all day. Naomi bit her lip, clearly uncomfortable. She avoided Ariel's eyes as she spoke. "It's not you, Ariel," Naomi said, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "It's just. I don't know. I've been feeling kind of weird about the astrology club lately. Like, you're really into it now, and it's like you've got this whole thing going on, and I'm just not sure where I fit in anymore." Ariel blinked, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't expected this. "What do you mean? I thought you were excited about it too." Naomi sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I am, but I guess I just feel left out. You've taken on this leadership role, and everyone's looking to you for answers. And I don't know, I just feel like I'm not really a part of it. Like you've moved on without me." The words stung more than Ariel anticipated, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Her mind was spinning with everything Naomi had just said. Had she really been neglecting her friend? Had her own growth somehow pushed Naomi away? "Oh, Naomi, I didn't mean to make you feel that way," Ariel said, her voice small, almost pleading. "I never meant to leave you out. I thought we were in this together." "I know, but," Naomi paused, struggling to find the right words. "It's not just about the club. It's like you've changed, and I'm still here, trying to catch up. I feel like I'm standing still while you're moving ahead." Ariel felt the weight of Naomi's words settle deep inside her. She had been so focused on her own journey, her own fears, and her own triumphs, that she hadn't realized how much she had unintentionally distanced herself from Naomi. Her heart ached at the thought of losing her best friend, the one person who had always been there for her. "Naomi, I'm sorry," Ariel said softly, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean to push you away. You mean everything to me, and I don't want you to feel like you're not a part of this. We're in this together, okay? I want you to be a part of this, always." Naomi's eyes softened, but there was still a trace of hurt behind them. "I just feel like you've got all these new people now. Like, I'm not your best friend anymore." Ariel took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions within her. She had been so caught up in proving herself, in finding her own space, that she hadn't realized she was leaving Naomi behind. She needed to fix this, now. "You're still my best friend, Naomi," Ariel said firmly. "Nothing's changed. You're the one person who's always had my back, and I don't want to lose that. I promise I'll do better. I'll make sure you're part of this, always." Naomi seemed to hesitate for a moment, her eyes searching Ariel's face. Then, with a small sigh, she nodded. "I just don't want to feel like I'm second place, you know." "I get it," Ariel replied, her voice soft. "You're not second place. You're first." That evening, Ariel sat on her bed, feeling both drained and relieved. The conversation with Naomi had left her with a lot to think about. She had been so focused on her own growth that she hadn't realized how much her journey might have affected the people closest to her. But now, she understood. The stars had guided her in many ways, but the most important lesson they had taught her wasn't about knowing all the answers, it was about the connections she made along the way. Sometimes, those connections were fragile, and it took effort to keep them strong. As she closed her eyes that night, Ariel made a promise to herself. She would show up, for Naomi, for the club, and most importantly, for herself. No matter how far she went, she would always make time for the people who mattered most. The days that followed were a mix of progress and reflection for Ariel. The rift between her and Naomi had been mended, but the weight of that conversation still lingered. It reminded her that growth wasn't just about moving forward alone, it was about bringing the people you cared about along with you. Naomi and she had begun to spend more time together, and things had returned to a familiar comfort, but Ariel couldn't shake the thought that she needed to be more aware of the people around her as she continued down this path. It was Friday afternoon when the next surprise came. The Astrology Club was meeting again, and this time, it wasn't just the typical discussions. Mr. Thompson had announced that they would be planning something special for the next month, a full moon gathering to dive deeper into the meanings of each phase of the moon and how they affected each zodiac sign. The group was excited, but Ariel had no idea what to expect. She arrived early, sitting down with a notebook and a cup of tea, trying to focus on her thoughts. The excitement in the air was palpable, people were talking about their ideas for the event, brainstorming ways to make it unique. There was a hum of energy in the room as students clumped together in small groups, discussing everything from decorations to guest speakers to the possibility of having a stargazing night afterward. Ariel looked around, her thoughts still on how she could balance her role as the group's unofficial leader while making sure Naomi felt included. It was easy to get caught up in the thrill of new things, new knowledge, new friends, new opportunities, but she knew she had to keep her priorities in check. It wasn't just about the Astrology Club or her own personal growth anymore, it was about building lasting connections and maintaining the relationships that meant the most to her. As she jotted down notes, the door swung open, and Amber entered the room with a grin on her face. Amber had always been one of those people who could light up a room the moment she walked in, but Ariel was starting to feel a little uneasy around her. There had been something in Amber's tone lately that Ariel couldn't quite place, and it made her wonder if there was more to the relationship between her and the rest of the club than she realized. "Hey, Ariel!" Amber called out, walking over to her. "I have a surprise for you." Ariel looked up from her notes, slightly confused. "A surprise?" Amber's grin widened as she pulled something from her backpack. "I know you've been working hard on your astrology stuff, so I wanted to give you something special." She handed Ariel a small box wrapped in silver paper. Ariel blinked in surprise as she took the box. "Amber, you didn't have to do this," she said, though the gesture was undeniably sweet. Amber waved her hand dismissively. "Of course I did. I know how much this means to you. You've been a huge help to the club, and honestly, I think you deserve something special." Ariel slowly unwrapped the paper, revealing a small, intricately carved wooden box. It was beautiful, dark mahogany with delicate designs etched into its surface. The craftsmanship was stunning, and for a moment, Ariel just stared at it in awe. There was something mysterious about it. It felt important, even though she wasn't sure why. "What's inside?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Amber gave her a sly smile. "Open it and see." Ariel opened the box, and inside, nestled on a bed of soft velvet, was a crystal pendant. It sparkled in the light, its surface smooth and polished. The crystal was a pale purple, almost like amethyst, but there was something about it that felt different. It wasn't just the beauty of the pendant, it felt, almost enchanted. There was a certain weight to it, an energy that Ariel couldn't quite explain. "It's a moonstone," Amber said, her voice lowering as if sharing a secret. "A friend of mine who's really into crystals told me it helps with intuition and enhances the connection to your inner self. I thought it would be perfect for you, especially with all the work you're doing in the Astrology Club. Plus, it's supposed to help with balance." Ariel held the pendant in her hand, her fingers tracing the smooth edges of the crystal. There was something almost comforting about it, as though it belonged to her, as though it had been waiting for her all along. A sense of calm washed over her, and for the first time in weeks, she felt grounded. "Thank you," Ariel said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. This is, really special. Amber's smile widened, clearly pleased with the reaction. I'm glad you like it. I thought it might be just the thing you need to keep moving forward. As Ariel looked down at the crystal, she couldn't shake the feeling that Amber's gift wasn't just an act of kindness. There was something more to it, something beneath the surface. Amber had been supportive of her from the start, but the subtle intensity in her actions and words lately made Ariel wonder if there was an unspoken motive behind the gift. Later that day, after the club meeting wrapped up, Ariel sat in the quiet of her room, holding the moonstone pendant in her hand. She couldn't quite explain the pull she felt toward it, but it was as if the crystal had a message for her, something she needed to learn or understand. She had always been attuned to the energies around her, especially when it came to astrology, but there was something different about the feeling she had when holding the pendant. It wasn't just the energy of the stone, it was as though the universe itself was trying to communicate with her. Her thoughts drifted back to Amber's words. It's supposed to help with balance. Balance. That was something Ariel had been struggling with for a while now. She had been so focused on her growth, on her new place in the world, that she hadn't taken the time to make sure she wasn't losing sight of the things that mattered most. She thought of Naomi, of the quiet tension between them, and realized how important it was to find balance, not just in her life, but in her relationships too. Ariel stood and walked to her window, holding the pendant in her hand as she gazed up at the stars. The moon was just beginning to rise, casting a soft glow over everything. The familiar twinkle of the stars made her feel connected to something bigger than herself, a reminder that, no matter how complicated her life felt, she was part of something vast and beautiful. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the moonstone's energy flow through her. And in that moment, she realized something important. She didn't have to navigate this journey alone. She had the people around her, Naomi, the Astrology Club, and even Amber, who were there, whether she realized it or not. With a soft smile, Ariel made a promise to herself. She would find her balance, not just in the stars, but in the relationships that meant the most to her. And with that thought, she held the moonstone close, allowing the quiet energy to settle within her. Ariel woke up the next morning feeling strangely calm. The moonstone pendant she had received from Amber seemed to radiate a quiet energy that kept her grounded. She hadn't taken it off since receiving it, and every time she held it, it reminded her of her promise to herself, to keep a balance between her personal growth, her relationships, and the journey that was unfolding in her life. As she prepared for the day, Ariel found herself thinking about Naomi again. After their heart-to-heart conversation, things had started to feel like they were returning to normal. But there was still an unease lingering between them, especially after the Astrology Club meeting the day before. Naomi had been quieter than usual, and Ariel couldn't help but feel as if there was still some unresolved tension. The club had been planning their full moon event, which was just a week away. The excitement in the air was palpable, but as the days ticked by, Ariel couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to face something much bigger than she anticipated. The growing anxiety in her chest wasn't just about the event, it was about the shift in her own sense of self and the effect that shift was having on her relationships. The following Friday arrived faster than Ariel expected, and with it, a wave of nerves. The full moon event was just around the corner, and the Astrology Club had been working non-stop to finalize all the details. There was a sense of anticipation hanging in the air, with decorations for the event filling the walls and a playlist of calming, celestial music ready to play. The group was buzzing with excitement, and the night promised to be a night of insight and magic. But, for some reason, Ariel couldn't focus. The excitement of the event felt distant, as if her attention was being pulled elsewhere. As she entered the school building that day, she spotted Naomi at her locker. Her friend seemed distracted, her usual bright energy replaced with a quiet detachment. It was the same look Ariel had seen earlier in the week, the one that suggested Naomi was feeling left behind again. The nagging feeling in Ariel's chest resurfaced. "Hey, Naomi," Ariel called, walking toward her with a tentative smile. Naomi turned toward her with a strained smile. "Oh, hey, Ariel. What's up?" I've been thinking about you, Ariel began, choosing her words carefully. And I just want to make sure we're good. You seemed a little distant this week, and I don't want you to feel like I'm ignoring you or anything. Naomi bit her lip, hesitating before responding. I'm fine, really. Just been thinking a lot, you know. She met Ariel's eyes, but there was something guarded in her gaze. Ariel frowned slightly. Are you sure? I don't want you to feel like I'm pushing you away. You're still my best friend, Naomi. I promise. Naomi sighed, her shoulders slumping. I know. It's just, with the full moon event coming up, I've been feeling like I'm not really contributing anything to it. I mean, you've taken over everything, and the club's been all about you lately, and I'm just kind of floating around. Ariel's heart sank as she heard Naomi's words. The last thing she wanted was for Naomi to feel invisible, but it seemed like her friend wasn't fully convinced of her place anymore. I never meant for it to feel that way, Ariel said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. I've been so focused on everything, I didn't even notice that you were feeling like this. You're an important part of the club, Naomi. You're an important part of everything. I need you. Naomi didn't say anything for a long moment, and for a second, Ariel thought she was about to pull away again. But then Naomi spoke, her voice quieter this time. I know I'm important to you, Ariel. I need to feel like I'm contributing, too. I want to be a part of it all. But I don't know where I fit in anymore. It's hard to keep up. Ariel's heart ached at how vulnerable Naomi sounded. She couldn't ignore the fact that Naomi was right, she had been so immersed in her own role in the club, and in her own journey, that she hadn't truly stopped to check in on her best friend. I hear you, Naomi, Ariel said, stepping a little closer. And I promise, I'll make sure you're included. I've been so focused on myself, but you matter just as much. I want you to feel like you belong, too. Naomi looked at her for a moment, her expression softening. You really mean that? Ariel nodded firmly. Of course I do. I'm sorry if I've made you feel like you weren't important. You're my best friend, and that won't change. Naomi gave a small, reluctant smile. Okay. I just needed to hear that. Thanks, Ariel. They shared a brief, quiet moment before Naomi's phone buzzed, interrupting the moment. She glanced at it, then looked back up at Ariel with a slightly raised eyebrow. Hey, I've got an idea, Naomi said, her voice a little more upbeat. I can help out with the decorations for the event. I've got some ideas that could really make the space look magical. How about I start brainstorming with you? Ariel's face lit up. That sounds perfect. I'd love that. The rest of the day passed quickly, and by the time the full moon event finally arrived, Ariel felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. The club had worked hard to prepare, and everything was falling into place. Naomi was right by her side, helping with last-minute decorations and ensuring everything looked just right. The energy in the room was electric, with students buzzing about the upcoming night and sharing their thoughts about the moon and its influence on their signs. As the evening approached, Ariel stood near the front of the room, taking in the final touches. The soft glow of candles illuminated the space, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. The walls were adorned with constellation charts, zodiac symbols, and the celestial artwork that had been carefully chosen by the club. The room looked magical, and Ariel couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for what they had created. But it wasn't just the decorations that made the room feel special. It was the feeling of community, of shared purpose, and of the friendships that had grown stronger over the past few months. Ariel looked around at her fellow club members, Amber, Naomi, and the others, and realized just how far they had come since that first awkward meeting. They had built something together, something that felt meaningful. She looked down at the moonstone pendant around her neck, feeling its energy once again. It had been a reminder of balance, of listening, and of being open to the unexpected. She had faced challenges, learned from her mistakes, and grown stronger because of them. And in that moment, as the room filled with laughter and anticipation, she realized that this was just the beginning. The night of the full moon event had finally arrived, and Ariel couldn't help but feel a nervous excitement coursing through her. The room was aglow with soft candlelight, casting a warm, inviting glow over the gathered students. The club had done an incredible job turning the space into a celestial haven. Constellation maps lined the walls, symbols of the zodiac signs hung from the ceiling, and the air was scented with a blend of lavender and sage, calming and mysterious all at once. Ariel stood near the front of the room, watching as students began to file in, chatting with one another, their voices tinged with anticipation. The night's event was meant to be more than just a celebration of the full moon, it was an opportunity to deepen their understanding of astrology, connect with each other, and share their personal experiences. But for Ariel, it felt like something even bigger. It was the culmination of everything she had worked for, everything she had learned, and everything she had grown into. As she adjusted the strands of her hair and glanced around the room, she spotted Naomi. Her friend had become more at ease since their conversation earlier in the week. Naomi had thrown herself into helping with the decorations and had even come up with an idea to give each guest a personal horoscope reading, offering a unique touch that had been a hit. The light in Naomi's eyes had returned, and Ariel couldn't help but feel grateful for her presence. It felt good to know they were back on the same page. "Everything looks amazing," Naomi said, walking over with a grin. "You've really outdone yourself, Ariel." Ariel smiled, relieved to see her friend's enthusiasm. "Thanks, Naomi. It's all thanks to everyone in the club. We've all put so much into this." Naomi nodded, glancing around the room. "It's definitely a vibe," she said, her voice filled with awe. "It feels like we've created something truly magical." Before Ariel could respond, Amber approached, her eyes shining with excitement. "We're ready to start," she announced, her voice practically buzzing with energy. "I'll kick things off, and then you'll do your presentation, right, Ariel?" Ariel nodded, adjusting the moonstone pendant around her neck. "Yeah, I'm ready. Just trying to keep it together. I've never spoken in front of this many people before." Amber placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've got this. You've been working hard for this moment. Just speak from the heart. The club believes in you." Ariel took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She had been looking forward to this night for weeks, but now that it was here, it felt surreal. She was about to present the culmination of everything she had been learning about astrology, the signs, the planets, the moon, and how they all tied together. She had created a detailed presentation, weaving in her own personal journey and reflections along the way, but it was more than just a lecture. This was her chance to share what astrology had done for her and why it was so important. As the clock struck 7 p.m., the event officially began. The room fell into a hush as Amber stepped up to the front of the room, a microphone in hand. She greeted everyone warmly, expressing gratitude for their attendance and enthusiasm. Then, as promised, she introduced Ariel. "Now, we're going to hear from our very own Ariel, who's been leading this club and helping us all learn so much about astrology," Amber said, her voice full of pride. "She's going to give us a little insight into how the stars align with our lives and the meaning of tonight's full moon. Ariel, take it away." Ariel stood up slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. She adjusted the moonstone pendant again, a gesture she had started doing unconsciously. It felt like the stone was grounding her, helping her focus. She stepped to the front, her hands slightly trembling, but her voice steady as she looked out at the sea of faces in front of her. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice quiet at first but growing in strength. "Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm so excited to share everything I've learned with you." Her eyes scanned the room, finding Naomi in the crowd. She gave her friend a small, reassuring smile, and Naomi smiled back. That small moment of connection gave Ariel the boost of confidence she needed. This full moon is a powerful one, Ariel continued, her voice gaining momentum. It's a time to reflect, to release, and to embrace what's coming next. In astrology, the full moon represents the culmination of a cycle. It's a time when everything that has been building up comes to fruition. It's also a time for closure, for letting go of what no longer serves us. But it's also a time for new beginnings, for new energy to flow in. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. The room was silent, every student hanging on her every word. A few months ago, I had no idea how much astrology would impact my life. I was just curious, looking for answers, trying to understand myself and the people around me. But what I've learned is that astrology isn't just about the stars and planets, it's about understanding who we are at our core. It's about finding balance, purpose, and meaning in a world that can feel so chaotic. Ariel felt a surge of emotion as she spoke, remembering the difficult moments she had faced in the past, her struggles with confidence, her strained relationship with Naomi, her feelings of uncertainty about the future. But in this room, surrounded by people who shared her passion, those struggles felt like distant memories. Each of us is connected to the universe in ways we can't always see, she continued. And tonight, as we gather under the full moon, I want to invite all of you to take a moment to reflect on your own journey. What have you learned about yourself? What do you need to release in order to move forward? Ariel's voice softened, the words flowing naturally now. Astrology has taught me so much, not just about the signs or the planets, but about myself and the people around me. It's helped me understand my strengths and weaknesses, my desires, and my fears. But most importantly, it's helped me realize that I'm not alone in this journey. We're all in this together. She paused again, her gaze drifting to Naomi, who was now smiling warmly at her. The tension that had existed between them seemed to melt away in that moment, and Ariel knew that their bond was stronger than ever. As Ariel finished her speech, the room erupted in applause. The energy in the room was electric, filled with admiration and respect for the girl who had led them to this point. Amber stepped forward, grinning from ear to ear. That was amazing, Ariel. You've inspired all of us to think more deeply about our own journeys and the power of the stars. Ariel smiled, her heart full. Thank you, Amber. But really, it's all of us. This is our journey together. After the presentation, the evening continued with a stargazing session in the school courtyard. Students huddled together, gazing up at the moon and sharing their thoughts on the full moon's energy. Ariel stood beside Naomi, feeling the cool night air on her skin, and for the first time in a long while, she felt truly at peace. The challenges of the past few months had led her here, to this moment of clarity and connection. As she looked up at the full moon, Ariel realized that this wasn't just the end of a chapter, it was the beginning of something much bigger. The stars had aligned, and the future was filled with infinite possibilities. The night of the full moon event had passed in a whirlwind of emotions, laughter, and deep reflections. Ariel felt as if everything had come full circle, her initial fears had been replaced with newfound confidence, and her relationship with Naomi had been mended. The bond between the members of the astrology club was stronger than ever. Yet, despite the joy of the evening, Ariel couldn't shake the feeling that something unexpected was coming. A feeling, almost like a warning, lingered at the back of her mind, but she pushed it away, focusing on the positive energy of the night. The next day, however, that feeling would prove to be more than just a fleeting thought. Ariel woke up to the sound of her phone vibrating incessantly on her bedside table. She groggily reached for it, her hand still heavy from sleep, but when she saw the number of notifications, her eyes snapped open. It was a message from Naomi. "Can we talk? I need to tell you something important." Ariel sat up in bed, her heart rate quickening. Naomi never sounded like this. She had sounded so happy the night before. What could have possibly happened overnight that would make Naomi reach out like this? Before Ariel could send a response, another notification popped up. It was a message from Amber. "Ariel, you need to check this out. I think something big is going down with the school's social media accounts. Ariel's stomach twisted into knots. She opened Amber's message immediately, and her eyes widened as she read. There's a rumor going around that someone's been posting fake horoscopes on the school's social media account. They're mocking astrology and making it look like a joke. A few students even posted videos of them mocking your last presentation, and it's starting to spread like wildfire. The admin's aware, but I don't think they realize how bad it's getting. Ariel froze. Her heart sank as she thought about everything she had worked for, everything she had built in the past few months. Could it really be falling apart so quickly? As she mulled over Amber's message, she heard a knock at the door. Ariel. It was her mom's voice from the hallway. Breakfast is ready. You should eat something before heading out. Thanks, Mom. I'll be right down, Ariel called out, trying to sound normal, even though her mind was racing with anxiety. She set the phone down and took a deep breath. There was no denying it. Something was happening, something she hadn't anticipated. It felt like everything she had worked for, the connection to her astrology club, her sense of purpose, was now being questioned and ridiculed by some students who didn't understand the significance of what they were doing. The last thing she wanted was for astrology to be mocked, especially by people who didn't take it seriously. But who could be behind this? Was it just a few individuals who didn't understand, or was there a more calculated effort to undermine the entire movement? Ariel tried to push those questions out of her mind as she joined her mom at the kitchen table. The smell of pancakes and coffee filled the air, and for a moment, it almost felt like things were normal again. But the unease gnawing at her wouldn't let her relax. Later that day, as Ariel walked to school, the whispers started. At first, it was subtle, just small groups of students snickering as she passed by. But as the day went on, the mocking comments became harder to ignore. Students made fake horoscope predictions about her, making fun of the astrology club, and even wearing shirts with sarcastic messages about the moon and the stars. The air was thick with ridicule, and Ariel couldn't help but feel every pair of eyes on her. By the time she reached the school courtyard, she spotted Naomi sitting alone at their usual spot. Her friend's face was pained, a mix of concern and guilt written across her features. Ariel hesitated, her mind swirling with confusion and frustration. She knew Naomi hadn't been the one to start this, but there was something off about the way Naomi was sitting there, as though she had something to say but wasn't sure how to say it. Naomi, Ariel called softly, walking toward her. Naomi looked up, her expression filled with hesitation. Hey. I'm so sorry about this. Ariel sat down next to her, crossing her arms. What's going on, Naomi? Why are people acting like this? Naomi swallowed hard before speaking. I don't know. But I think I might know who's behind it. She paused, looking at Ariel with a pained expression. I overheard a group of students talking yesterday after the event. I think some of them didn't take your presentation seriously, like, they're mocking you and the whole astrology thing. They think it's just some trend. And, well, I didn't want to believe it, but I think some of them are really trying to make you look like a joke. Ariel's chest tightened. How could they? I've worked so hard for this. We've all worked so hard to make the astrology club a place for people to learn and grow. How could anyone just tear that down like that? Naomi lowered her eyes. I wish I knew, Ariel. But I heard one of the main instigators talking about how they were going to keep mocking astrology until they made you regret ever bringing it up. I didn't want to believe it, but now I'm not sure how to stop it. Ariel's heart dropped as the weight of Naomi's words sank in. This wasn't just some innocent teasing. This was something much more malicious, an intentional attempt to discredit what she and her friends had worked so hard to build. She could feel the sting of betrayal already, but something deeper inside her stirred, anger, frustration, but also determination. We can't let them get away with this, Ariel said, her voice steely with resolve. I've put too much of myself into this, and I won't just stand by and let them tear it down. Naomi nodded slowly, her expression somber but understanding. So, what do we do? Ariel's mind raced with possibilities. This was more than just a small prank. Someone, maybe more than one person, was deliberately trying to sabotage her, to ridicule everything she stood for. But Ariel wasn't going to let them win. We need to show everyone why astrology matters, Ariel said, her voice growing stronger with each word. We'll make them understand what we're about. We'll stand up for what we believe in. Naomi looked at her, a new spark of hope in her eyes. You're right. We can't let them win. Ariel stood up, her heart racing, but her mind clearer than ever. This was just the beginning of a new challenge. But she knew that with her friends by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. She wouldn't let anyone take away what they had created. The next day at school was like walking into a battlefield. Ariel could feel the weight of the stares, the mocking glances, and the whispered comments that seemed to follow her wherever she went. It was as if she had become a target overnight, a symbol of something that people thought was laughable and irrelevant. But in her heart, Ariel knew she wasn't just any target, she was a force to be reckoned with. And today, she was going to prove it. As she walked through the hallway toward the astrology club's meeting room, Ariel could hear the snickers behind her, the taunts about astrology, and the sound of a few students imitating moon-related chants in exaggerated voices. It was clear that the pranksters who had started this mess were taking full advantage of the situation. They'd found their target, and they weren't going to let it go. But Ariel was determined to face them head-on. She entered the club room to find Naomi already sitting at their usual table, her head down and fingers tapping nervously on the desk. The energy in the room felt different than it had in the past. The space that had once been full of excitement and curiosity now seemed heavy with the weight of the ridicule that had flooded the school. "Hey, Naomi," Ariel said softly, sitting down beside her. "How's everyone holding up?" Naomi raised her head, offering a weak smile. "I think they're all afraid to speak up. Everyone's feeling the tension. But we can't just let this slide, right?" Ariel nodded, her eyes firm. "No way. We've worked too hard for this. We're not backing down." She glanced around the room, and the few students who were present met her gaze. "We need to talk about how we can fight back. But not with anger or petty arguments, what we need is to show them the value of what we're doing here. We need to show them how much astrology means to us." Amber walked in just then, her face tight with frustration. "You're right, Ariel. We can't let them win. But how do we show them that what we're doing isn't just some trend or joke?" Ariel thought for a moment, feeling the weight of the question. How could they make people see the value in astrology, in something that had become so ridiculed? But then, an idea came to her. "We can't change their minds by arguing with them," Ariel said, her voice more certain now. "But we can bring the community together. We need to show them that what we're doing here is about more than just reading horoscopes, it's about self-reflection, connection, and finding meaning in our lives. We need to host an event, something that can't be ignored." Naomi's eyes lit up. "What if we do something big, something that proves astrology is real in a way that's undeniable?" Ariel smiled, feeling a surge of hope. "Exactly. Let's host a Night of the Stars event, a chance for everyone in the school to come and experience astrology firsthand. We'll have live readings, discussions, and even a chance for people to see how their birth charts relate to their personalities and lives. We'll show them the power of what we're doing." Amber nodded eagerly. "That's a great idea, Ariel. People won't be able to ignore us if we create an event like that. They'll have to see the depth of what we're offering." Ariel felt a sense of relief flood over her. This was it, the chance to turn the tables, to stop the mockery and show the entire school the strength and importance of astrology. It wouldn't just be a way to get back at the students who had been making fun of her, it would be a chance to truly educate people, to show them the wisdom of the stars and the lessons that could be learned from them. Over the next few days, the astrology club worked tirelessly to organize the Night of the Stars event. It wasn't easy, everyone was dealing with the constant pressure of mocking comments, and the school was buzzing with rumors. But instead of succumbing to the negativity, Ariel and her friends threw themselves into the planning. They designed posters, created flyers, and reached out to the school administration for support. Ariel made sure the event would be something that would leave a lasting impact. She worked on a presentation about the significance of each zodiac sign, how astrology could provide insight into relationships, and the deeper meanings behind the planets and their movements. She asked her club members to create workshops, where students could learn how to interpret their own birth charts or understand the relationship between astrology and mental health. It was going to be an event that was not only educational but also interactive. But there was one key element that Ariel was the most excited about: she wanted to end the night with a moment of reflection. A chance for everyone to connect with the energy of the full moon once again and set intentions for the future. This event was about healing, growth, and the belief that everyone had the power to shape their destiny. When the night of the event finally arrived, Ariel could hardly contain her excitement. The school auditorium had been transformed into a magical, otherworldly space. Silver and gold stars hung from the ceiling, casting a gentle glow over the room, while soft instrumental music played in the background. The walls were decorated with large constellation maps, and in the center of the stage stood a large crescent moon, surrounded by twinkling fairy lights. The atmosphere was inviting, calm, and filled with anticipation. Students trickled in, some curious, some skeptical, but all with an open mind. As Ariel stood at the entrance greeting people, she noticed that the mocking voices from earlier in the week had quieted down. There was something about the way the event was set up, something about the energy of the room that made people stop and think. She had set up a few stations throughout the room, each focused on a different aspect of astrology. One station offered free birth chart readings, another taught people about their sun, moon, and rising signs, and a third was dedicated to understanding the relationship between astrology and mental health. Students were gathered in small groups, discussing their signs, laughing as they compared their horoscopes, and exchanging insights about their personal experiences. Ariel felt a sense of pride in the air. The atmosphere was one of inclusivity, learning, and, most importantly, acceptance. The ridicules from earlier in the week seemed to fade as people became more engaged with the experience, and Ariel knew that they were witnessing something significant. They were opening their minds, not just to astrology, but to each other, and to the idea that understanding different perspectives could lead to greater connection and empathy. At the end of the night, as the event drew to a close, Ariel stood at the front of the room, ready to close the evening with her final words. The crowd had gathered around the stage, and the light of the full moon shone through the large windows, casting a soft, silvery light over the room. "Thank you, everyone," Ariel began, her voice full of emotion. "Tonight, we came together under the stars to share something that means a lot to all of us. Astrology isn't just about predicting the future. It's about understanding ourselves, our relationships, and the world around us. It's about learning from the past and setting our intentions for the future. Tonight, we've shared our experiences and learned from one another. And that's what truly matters." She paused, looking around the room at all the faces, some familiar, some new. "I hope tonight reminded you that we all have the power to shape our own destiny, just like the stars have shaped the world. No one can take that away from us." As Ariel spoke those final words, a wave of applause filled the room. Students cheered and clapped, and for the first time in a long while, Ariel felt a sense of peace wash over her. The event had been a success. They had shown the school that astrology wasn't just a trend or a joke. It was a meaningful and powerful tool for self-discovery and connection. And as the night came to a close, Ariel couldn't help but smile. They had faced the ridicule, the doubt, and the mockery, and had come out stronger on the other side. The Night of the Stars event was nothing short of a triumph. As Ariel stood on the steps outside the school the following afternoon, she watched her classmates leave the building, their faces filled with a mix of awe and curiosity. There were no more taunts, no more mockery. Instead, students were exchanging phone numbers, asking each other about their zodiac signs, and even planning to meet up for astrology club meetings. The transformation had been undeniable, and Ariel couldn't help but feel a profound sense of satisfaction. But what surprised her the most was how she felt about herself. Standing there, under the same sky she had once questioned, Ariel realized that the challenge she had faced wasn't just about astrology. It was about believing in her own worth, in her own power, and in her ability to change the narrative. She hadn't just proven astrology's significance, she had proven to herself that her voice mattered. The next morning, as Ariel walked through the school halls, something felt different. There was an air of respect that hadn't been there before. Students now greeted her with smiles, some of them even asking about the next astrology club meeting. It was clear that the event had done more than just change perceptions, it had sparked a shift in how people viewed her, and perhaps, even themselves. When she arrived at the club room, Naomi, Amber, and the rest of the members were already there, chatting excitedly about the success of the event. "I can't believe it!" Amber exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. "I overheard some of the upperclassmen talking today. They said they didn't think astrology was serious before, but now they're going to give it a try." "That's huge." Naomi grinned at Ariel. "You were right. The event completely turned things around. No one's laughing anymore." Ariel smiled, feeling the weight of the past few weeks lift off her shoulders. "I couldn't have done it without all of you," she said sincerely. "You all believed in this, even when it seemed impossible. I'm so grateful for you." As she looked around at her friends, Ariel realized that this wasn't just about astrology. It was about the power of community, about standing together and supporting each other when the world seemed to want to tear them apart. They had taken something that was ridiculed and turned it into something powerful, something that could change minds and open hearts. Just then, the door to the room opened, and in walked a few students who had been among the most vocal in mocking the astrology club in the past. Ariel's heart skipped a beat as they stepped inside. She wasn't sure what to expect. Would they come to gloat? Or was this their way of apologizing? The group looked hesitant, but one of them, a boy named Kyle, spoke up. Hey, Ariel," he said, his voice a little awkward. "We just wanted to say, well, we kind of messed up. We didn't really understand what you guys were doing. But after last night, we get it. We're sorry if we hurt you." Ariel was taken aback for a moment. The sincerity in Kyle's voice was unexpected. He wasn't being sarcastic or mocking, he was genuinely apologizing. "It's okay," Ariel said, her voice calm and kind. "I understand. Sometimes, people make fun of things they don't understand. But it's great that you're willing to learn more about astrology now. That's what it's all about, understanding, growth, and learning from each other." Kyle smiled and nodded. "Yeah, we definitely want to know more. Maybe we can come to a meeting sometime." Ariel smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle in her chest. "Of course. The more, the merrier." As the new students made their way to the back of the room, Ariel took a deep breath and looked around at her friends. This was the moment. This was the resolution she had been hoping for. The weeks that followed were filled with growth. The astrology club became one of the most popular clubs in the school, with students from all grade levels attending meetings and participating in discussions. What had started as a small group of people with a shared interest had turned into a community. A place where everyone was welcome, no matter their background or beliefs. But perhaps the most significant change was in Ariel herself. She had always known she was different, that she saw the world through a unique lens, but now, she had come to embrace that difference. She no longer felt the need to hide behind her uncertainty or fear of judgment. Her confidence had grown, and with it, her belief in the power of her voice. One afternoon, as Ariel sat in the clubroom, reflecting on how far they had come, Naomi joined her. "You did it," Naomi said softly, sitting down beside her. You turned everything around. Not just for the club, but for yourself. Ariel smiled, her heart swelling with pride. I guess I did, didn't I? Naomi grinned. You know, we've been talking about what to do next. Maybe it's time to take this beyond the school. We could organize a big astrology event, invite people from the community, bring in experts to speak. The possibilities are endless. Ariel's mind raced as she considered the idea. A community-wide event, expanding their reach even further. The thought was exhilarating. It wasn't just about proving a point anymore, it was about creating something lasting, something that could change lives. That sounds incredible, Ariel said, her voice full of excitement. We've come so far. Now it's time to take it to the next level. As they brainstormed ideas for the future, Ariel realized that her journey had only just begun. What had started as a simple love for astrology had grown into a movement that would continue to inspire, challenge, and unite people for years to come. But beyond the events, beyond the lessons, and beyond the changes in her school, Ariel understood something deeper. She had learned that the true power didn't come from astrology or any other belief system, it came from within. The power to stand up for what she believed in, to rise above the negativity, and to never give up on herself, no matter the challenges that lay ahead. As she looked out the window, Ariel felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had faced the mockery, the doubts, and the fears. But now, she stood taller than ever, knowing that no matter what the future held, she would always have the strength to face it. Life is full of surprises, Ariel thought, her mind drifting to the words she had spoken at the event. But love and belief in yourself will always lead the way. And with that, she knew she was ready for whatever came next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. Have you ever faced a challenge that forced you to believe in yourself more? How did you rise to the occasion?